Okay.
To the bed on the wall.
Recording.
So, what I kind of put together, obviously it was just a small view. It was your prior two meetings. I guess there was one in May and one in June. So, I'm not gonna lie, I've been by, but I have not been in to the Glacier Preserve yet. But I know that, obviously, there's talk of natives versus invasives and whatnot, so the first thing I wanted to share with you, and I can make extra copies, because I had to put this together today, because Diane Alden, and you got to have this in front of you, so I guess I should tell her. She is a member of called Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct,
Sure.
and she has solicited at the wildflower meetings to have volunteers if they want to come and pull invasives when they specifically do those events. And I knew you had some concerns, Karen, at one of the meetings talking about liability and how do we, so I asked her yesterday, and I have here, this is what she explained to me that they do for Croton Aqueduct. One, they'll recon an area to determine what potentially is there, like poison ivy, to see if it's an issue, you know, before they even have volunteers on site, because we're gonna target this area with however many volunteers we get. And then as volunteers will show up on, let's say, whatever the removal day is, they'll show them what poison ivy looks like. They will have, I was not familiar with this product, because I pull poison ivy out at home, and I'm used to be in it a lot doing wetlands, and I would say I'm not really, thankfully, knock on wood, susceptible to it, but
Wow.
that could change. That could change in a heartbeat.
That's what they say,
It's
yeah.
like seasickness, that could change in a heartbeat, so, you know, I just hope that continues. But this product called Technu, she has that available. It's like a cream, I guess, that if you get exposed,
Yeah, you can put it on
Yeah.
beforehand or use it to wash after.
yeah, I mean, she's gotten it after putting that on, but not nearly to the degree that she thought she would, so obviously it helps. And she says, in addition to having first aid kits, just from a general
And
safety
poison ivy
perspective.
wipes actually really work.
Okay, yeah,
But yeah, post contact poison ivy wipes.
Okay.
We didn't get those, because I saw you
You
had.
can just get them online.
Yeah.
And then for that, there's actually Zenfil, so it's when you're already, some people are hypersensitive, and if somebody does that, you open a pack, you make this poultice type of cream, and you put it on, and it really
Just
just,
to break it.
yeah, you
What
should
is that?
probably still, someone's overreactive, get them
Yeah.
to the hospital, but it's good just to have on you for the people who
Okay.
don't know
What's it
that they
called?
might.
What is it?
It's called Zandel.
CA?
I'll get that.
Yeah, because I get poison ivy easy, I don't have to go to the hospital
Some
usually,
people
but,
swell.
yeah,
and
but
they-
I do get it quickly, so I would
Where
like
do
to
you get
get
it?
that.
CVS, Walgreens.
Zandel?
Zandel,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and it's a very graphic photo on the package.
Cool.
But it's something that is fast acting. Techno is your great basic, but for your hyper
Crisis
responders.
intervention.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then, which is something I recall from my former days, they would like have a formal safety meeting on site, you know, not only to just go over PI, but, you know, these slip trip hazards, the safe use of equipment that was gonna be used, even if it's just clippers and shears, you know, if you have, you know, kids 13, 14, 15 out there who, you know, just, you know, don't do their own
But we
lawns, you
have-
know, that type of thing.
But we haven't totally, I mean, I know, I was talking to Sue, and we were trying to get somebody in there to also kind of do like a look through and a conservation plan, and I'm sorry that it just hasn't materialized, unfortunately. But we haven't even determined if we're gonna go and do a volunteer hand removal of invasives.
Right, but
You're
it,
just
but it,
answering
but
the
it,
question
but
that
if-
Karen asked.
yeah,
What is
and,
Oh, I
and,
beg
and
your
if you
pardon.
do, you know,
How do you?
There's some-
I-
this,
how do you
this
say
may
safely?
dictate
I
a
beg your
yes or
pardon,
no,
best
that's
practices,
kind
right,
of my
decide you have
Right.
thought
Oh,
process.
okay, so
But
I'm
sort of
sorry.
a general for any
sorry?
volunteer.
To have people sign a release.
She does not have them sign a release, but she told me, which I did not put down as item number 5, they are somehow covered by the New York State Workers' Compensation Fund, so that's never had to have been used for Old Croton Aqueduct, but if something did happen, that's what they're covered by, that's what she told me.
And would we?
But it's
Is it
Old
new?
Croton, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Karen. No, you
So
go
I'm
first.
thinking of, maybe it's not the same anymore, but I remember things like, even if you're in the town, like baseball team I think you used to have to sign releases. I don't know if that's still true.
I don't know.
So I don't know.
It was for my kids' little league, cause I coached
Yeah.
and had to collect those,
And you had to sign.
yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's something that we could do regarding that. I mean, I guess
Okay.
we could ask the town
It's interesting, she
council.
didn't mention that,
Yeah.
I'll
I would-
I'll
in
ask
In
her
order
to
to
say.
take any classes, like aerobics classes and stuff through the town, I have to sign a release,
Okay.
so they probably.
Oh, even for that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
so I'm aware of that,
At the
okay.
community center.
Yeah.
I just remember it from, softball.
Yeah, no,
It's good to look into it and just confirm.
I mean, that's, when we get to volunteers,
right.
we're a
when we get
long
to
way from volunteers.
Yes.
So, Dennis, excuse us though,
Right.
cause we've been talking about Glacier for a little bit, do you want us to give you a little bit of a background on what we're thinking about that? Like some of the key points are?
Sure, yeah,
I'll just
You
kick
go,
off,
go,
but not,
go,
but
go.
I need you guys to jump in.
Yeah.
So, the town owns this Glacier thing, we were bequeathed it somehow, I guess, right, isn't that it? And there's some funding there, I think the number was like $178,000 of
Yeah.
like money that was kept, and I guess some of it has grown over the years as well, that is supposed to be used for the upkeep of this space. So we did do a field trip, and we walked around there and we looked at it. And there's lots of native stuff in there, but then there's a lot of encroaching non-native things. So we were thinking one of our key projects could be, let's revitalize that, because it can also tie into a pollinator pathway as well. And so with that, now that's the next step was to,
We were thinking of having somebody come in as a consultant and walk through the property and start a 5, 10-year, 15-year management plan, understanding what the budget is and how you could use that and maybe work on it incrementally.
right,
Steve said they did do the meadow not that long ago, but they had some problems with it. And there's a lot of, as Lucille said, invasive species, but there was thoughts that we could even put in a demonstration garden. I mean, I think
And
we
just to
could
be
do,
clear,
keeping
the-
in vision with the Glazier's mission statement, which I don't have in front of me, but
We
but-
passed that around.
yeah.
but just to make sure it's clear is the consultant wouldn't do the work, but would basically do a plan for us.
right,
That would be bid out,
That would be
basically.
bid out, right, so it would be, what do we do?
Or not bid out, I mean, it depends
Well,
what we decide we
could
wanna
we do for the
yeah.
first, like,
What would the
year,
phases
2,
be,
1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, what
Right,
can we
right.
do that we can manage it and get it done?
right.
Versus, I mean, if you look at it now, it's like, oh my god, it's
You
like a
can't,
tsunami
you
of
can't bring in, like, I don't think you can just
bring volunteers.
Yeah, I don't think you can just rely on like, we're just gonna have a volunteer work day and it'll get done.
I think
It's-
that
Right.
time
it's-
has passed.
it's
Yeah.
time
Okay.
has passed,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's what that's all about, so what, I guess a decision point would be, if we,
I mean, I recommended somebody and I haven't gotten anything back from him unfortunately, so that's a bummer. But if we know other environmental consultants who might be wanting to just make that initial trip and
To get us
do a walkthrough and wanna do that, because under, I think, 3,000, under 3,000, we don't have, it doesn't have to be put out to
Right.
bid, but I think we still have to get something to the town board saying, this is what we wanna do, so they'll release the funds.
Right.
Glacier's funds are in a trust, so.
Right, so we
need
have
that
to give
extra.
them something formal as opposed to just say, oh, can you just,
Right,
Right.
do that.
I'm sorry.
I'm happy that this conversation came up because we were discussing, even on a very small scale, informal discussion with invasive removal, and then we pretty much have all of the cast of characters in a short walk area, but if we do actually go and point out and remove, I think that knowing that we're going to be having, not just the poison ivy in that, but also to formalize that. I was thinking of targeting some of the Artemisia over by the Bay, there are areas very close by that we could have volunteers doing some weeding. And before we do that, I think we should formalize, and I didn't realize classes required a release form. I think that would be in order before we start that, whether it's under conservation board or even if we're just doing that, Pollinator Pathway, whatever is the parent group that's sponsoring that. I didn't think about the release.
I just have a question, I was just thinking about
That's
trying to
true.
get someone, a consultant. Maybe since you've obviously been on the other side for many years, I mean, do you think it's feasible to try to get, I mean, with people so busy and they're trying to get work, I'm wondering how easy it really is to get someone from the private sector. I wonder if there are people, I don't know, in some kind of agency or some kind of program that might wanna come out just to give their, they may not be the most perfect person in the world or the most experienced, but they may have a lot of ideas or energy or like,
Like Cornell Cooperative.
yeah, something like that. I mean, maybe
Or prism
that-
funds even.
To do the work.
Well, no,
Not
I
to
mean,
do the
no,
work,
yeah.
no, just to do the walkthrough, you're saying.
No, I'm talking about someone,
I'm misunderstanding.
like, someone who can actually look at and say, here's a plan.
Right.
I mean, I think it's difficult, especially if it's initially a small amount of money, which is relatively for more,
Sure,
most of the
depending,
projects
yeah.
that are being done, to attract somebody. I think that's gonna, in the,
Well, at this
I think
stage
that's
though,
kind
you're
of
just
hard.
talking about identification, right? You're looking at someone they're gonna identify areas and then
Exactly.
they're gonna want some direction though, because if you're gonna go down the road of no pesticides whatsoever and no herbicides, and if it is like a wall of kudzu, you may have nobody take that job, you know what I mean? So
And
that,
I'm not saying that
Yeah.
I would say that I would be on the one of use the techniques available for short term to achieve your goals.
yeah, I think,
But that's a
having done
different
wetland
discussion.
restorations, that, you know, even regulatory agencies, even
Yeah.
with tidal water bodies,
Mhm.
if it's truly, oh my God, we gotta nuke a bunch of frag
Yeah.
before we start spending all this money on
Exactly.
buying plants and planting, you nuke the frag, but you know, it's gotta be nuked in the fall, you know, when, you know, everything's
have to
bringing
know
it
the
back to the
frag-
roots and whatever, you're not gonna do it in
Exactly, that's what
spring,
you need
so.
a professional.
So
Yeah.
the consultant would be able to identify sort of
Exactly.
all of
That's
that,
what we're looking
yes,
for.
yeah,
That's
Is that
exactly.
Phragmites?
yes,
The nuke
yes.
the frag.
Yes.
Let's like
I
use
got
that,
it in
we
my
make t-shirts,
calendar.
yeah.
I'm spray my Phragmites in
Glyphosate,
August.
nuke it, yep.
Yeah.
And I have a related question,
Sure.
because I don't know what we're gonna find at Glacier, but when we were doing the pollinator week at the farmer's market, a lot of us were there and involved in trying, you know, various groups. And a woman came up to me and said she lives in Newcastle, she has, you know, many acres and she has woods, and she has Japanese knotweed and tree of life and lots of the tree of life.
Right.
And she wanted to know, and she actually has gotten rid of the tree of heaven by learning from an arborist to like slice it and just put a drop of a like Roundup into it.
Right.
And she wanted to know if our town has any plan that's on, when it started now, that's on its way to try and, you know, it's already all over, I mean, the trees and the Japanese knotweed. And she asked me and I didn't know, but it's like, is there a plan like through the Parks Department or Public Works or anything that you know?
Not that I'm aware of, no, and as we get later into the I guess agenda for today, you will, I have, maybe you've seen the article, I have an article on knotweed that, you know, it's basically in England, it needs to be included with title for property and
Yes, and mortgages.
yes, exactly, yeah, so you read that article?
Yeah.
That's a great article, yeah, and I have other ideas as to why that's important to maybe some of the other things you're trying to do.
We
Where
may have
people
to-
who aren't as into plants as you are, how do you get them interested? Well,
You can't sell your house.
if it's gonna
that's-
cost them money,
Yeah.
then everybody's
Yeah.
interested,
Yeah.
including the majority of my family who isn't into plants
Right,
at the
sure.
level that I am, but they're all into money, so like, they, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and you know, the tree of heaven has been for many years, it's deeply infiltrated,
Yeah.
but knotweed is just starting to enter, you know, it's along the roadways.
Oh, it's
It's
like
a
lines
big- it's not
of
just starting.
stone.
It's a
Well,
huge
it's along the
concern on Cape
roadways,
Cod.
but in people's yards, I think that's where we have an opportunity before it gets into people's yards. You know, if you go to people's yards, you're gonna find multiflora, you're gonna find bittersweet, you're gonna find tree of heaven, but not as many will have knotweed yet.
Well, it's less
So
than
we
a
still-
mile from our
there's
house.
an interventional,
It's
yeah.
on Route 128, and it's also, there's a patch of it just north of Chappaqua Crossing on the southbound lane.
Right.
Oh,
So
So,
one of,
yeah.
one of the things that's
Exactly.
important, and I know
It's just before you get to Chappaqua Crossing on the right, it's a small stand, but on 128, there's huge stands of it already.
and it
Yeah,
looks
see
very
on the
different
roadways.
when it is just starting. And so to help the homeowners, because most of what they have online with that, it is, we were just saying this, wide stands of it.
Stands,
But
yeah.
you can get it when it's this and
Very
it's just
innocuous
starting
looking, it
new
looks
Yeah,
very
it looks like
houses
that, it
with
comes
it.
out red.
Yeah.
Yes, it does, it's very, it just looks alien-like with it, and
I haven't seen it when it starts.
right, and so I think that part of that is that some of it is established on town land.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's this back and forth of kind of both homeowners need to be, need education to identify. And I think addressing what is on town land is an excellent opportunity to say that, because really the seeds are going to go, and they're coming up off of state roads and county roads as well. So it really needs to have a targeted approach, with all of, you know, I see it as being salted on a daily basis with seeds just waiting for that. And additionally, it's any disturbed soil, so you need to remove it and bag it. When people just dig it up, they can't compost it, they can't just throw it in their neighbor's yard or in another area, because any rootlet is going to be your next starting of that
Yeah,
colony.
could be.
And when you see people working on the sides of the roads with construction, it's where they put that soil. So they're creating a disturbance, there could be a small stand, and it just all gets dumped somewhere. So it's also, you know, to get rid of the material, right? But then also to plan for bare soil. You know, it's really multifaceted, and so I'm so glad that you were going to bring that up, because it is a feeling, not of panic, but just of noticing over the course of a season how much there is, and how much even a small stand is appearing on the roads that I travel every day.
That you didn't notice before.
That I didn't notice before.
I
You know,
understand.
and yeah, it's
It's funny, I think it was brought here for erosion control, and the story I heard was
was.
that
Oh.
it eroded, not it the seed, it the stabilized surface that they thought they were going to stabilize, and then the knotweed decided to sprout, so it was like,
It was
you
a
know,
timing thing, I read the
Exactly,
same
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
It
yeah.
brought, it didn't come up until after the spring rains and all that.
Right, so if plants could have a sarcastic laugh, knotweed is it.
Yes, exactly, fair enough,
So, okay.
okay.
So, yeah, and I know just, this is my, friends and my wife, who live on Cape Cod. The goat thing, they had a small property, old, almost cottage on the beach, and we were out to dinner, this is in Dennis, and
Okay.
they we're gonna bring the goats in to get rid of the poison ivy, because that really was like their front lawn, well, I should say front yard, thankfully no lawn, because there's enough sand, but they just wanted to keep that. And, you know, the guy brings the goat, the guy's gotta stay with the goat, it's like multiple applications, and it's like, you know, I think, you know, if that's something that you ever wanted to sort of pair with like a school program or something like that, I think it would be like good from a demonstration perspective, but it didn't sound like, you know, that it can guarantee sort of to be the most economical choice, you know? But it is a cool idea, I kinda like it, you know, but when I look more into it, I'm like,
Doesn't really work.
it's gonna cost, huh? Okay, you know what I mean? So it was like, so, I know that someone had mentioned it, and I said I just wanted to bring it up just out of courtesy, because I knew someone on the Cape who did it, and, you know, so, and I never got an answer, we haven't seen them since, I guess when I get to go back in August, I wanna
there's
take a
a-
ride by and see if it worked.
in Pound Ridge, there's the Invasives Project, and they have done that. So they did that for a very discreet location. We were talking about it for the area directly across the street, actually, between the library and the church.
Oh,
There's a
yeah.
small area. And what it really is it is a tool for marketing to bring, you know,
Oh,
young
that's cute.
families in.
Yeah.
Interesting,
You-
okay.
And
I
there
wouldn't have thought,
there
yeah.
are local, where they corral them, and then you arrange your event around that. and they do make a dent, hungry little ones that they are, but it is not eradication or long-term, but it's a nice kickoff and tying it in with, you know, the library or with a children's
That makes
activity
perfect sense.
is a way to do that. We have, in the future, we have a Boy Scout who has approached me for his Eagle Scout project, and he is very devoted to the process of invasive plants. So, and already at 12, he's contacted us and been very, you know, this is his area with that. So, what's nice is, again, not solutions, but at least on the volunteer side, someone who wants to take on. He's ambitious. He wants to mention the duck pond. I suggested that there may be other locations just to keep in mind, because the duck pond is really a large area to do that. So this came up across there. So yeah, we pretty much had ruled that out as being the solution for everything, but it might be a nice adjunct and a nice publicity marker.
Yeah, I like that idea.
And they have the contacts, Carolyn Sears from the Invasives Project.
Sure.
Has that, a local deer herder.
Contact.
Goat herder, yeah, I'm sorry, deer herder. No, sorry.
Yeah, that's a whole
Deer would
other
be good if
topic.
they just moved them somewhere.
And if they ate the
But they
right
won't
things,
eat,
they ate the
yeah.
wrong things. So anyway, so we have some things to do about
Right.
that.
Yeah, no, I know it, and you know, I mean, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to do and not allowed to do personally, because obviously coming from the world of consultants and, you know, knowing
Yeah.
that there's some sole practitioners out there who are not gonna have the overhead, so they'll be able to pocket more of the money and therefore they're just not as expensive and
I don't
Hence-
think,
Yeah,
that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need,
that's the
yeah, we
world
help.
that, you know, pretty much led me to here, you
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah, right.
working for a
Yeah.
larger firm, so I would say,
Yeah, if you know people, for
I would,
sure.
you know, yeah, before I commit to anything, I'll make a note to myself to check with Sabrina and,
What
You
are the
know,
rules, yeah.
right,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I'm not gonna give one name, I'm not gonna give 100 names, what's reasonable, or am I not allowed to give any? I have no
Yeah.
knowledge of that at this point, I've only been here a month, so I don't, so but I will.
And
Yes, I'm
are
sorry.
trees coming? I'm just sorry, I'm just jumping ahead to the last one. Are trees
Yeah,
coming?
cause that was not in the original, and then Steve today hands me this list
Oh, they were
and
ordered,
said,
yeah.
yes, they were, and this is like, so everything here is times 2, so I guess 5 red maples, 5 sugar maples, 5 crab apples, 5 white pines, and 5 sycamores times 2, so it's actually 10, cause I guess it's the double with the
Right.
NIPA, so they're coming probably in October. And so he told me today that, you know, I could check with the recreation department to see if we would get assistance, but if not, then we would have to hire a contractor, and I'm in the $300 to $400 per tree to
How big are
plant
they?
range. They're 2.5 caliber and the evergreens are 8 feet, so
Oh,
just based
So
on.
wait, which
They're coming-
are these the street ones?
no,
No,
these
no.
are coming
These
for
are- those are
sale.
all-
Oh, this is 2-for-1 sale.
Yeah.
So where are we putting them?
I believe they were targeted for Glacier, he told me, so.
right, that's why I saw it down here, that's
So-
why I didn't understand.
So I guess that would
Ah.
be one of my roles, and if you guys, maybe we should plan something together if you wanted to take a walk and why, cause I know
That'd be great.
I've done it for, we'll see if I'm successful or not, I think it was a Scotch pine? There was a tree they lost and Leah told me she's 0 for 2. So the last time I was there for open gate day, she says, I need you to do a recon and tell me why or where you would plant this tree and why it would work best. So I gave her a spot and I said, you know, these are like my 3-4 reasons, and she's like, I don't think I've ever come at it from so many. I said, I'm gonna go with that. So I said, all right, that sounds good. So, you know, we could, so I have all your emails and I'd be open to planning that.
Do a little field trip and look.
Yeah, exactly,
Gotta find
and
out where you're
obviously
gonna
do that beforehand, but I guess on that subject, so Sabrina mentioned about needing to, cause August is budget season, so you'd have to, you know, get
Right.
like a budget for that, so am I the one who would, you know, sort of generate to her that, you know, we have these trees coming in, and this is what we're gonna need. If we cannot get someone to plant them, and the trees are not just gonna be able to stay in the fall and over winter, you know what I mean?
Or-
So they're gonna have to be planted, right?
Or is it the Parks Department, because I know they were also doing the mowing periodically there, so it might fall under Parks Department, so we should at least, if
Right,
we
right.
don't have a budget for it, alert somebody that
Right,
we're going to need.
right, and then my concern is if it doesn't happen, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
I forgot the email, delete, whatever the reason, it's like, okay, so now we got 2 weeks to plant, you know,
No, but seriously, yeah,
all
that's a good
these trees,
point.
so like, yeah, just try to,
They also do other maintenance there, so it's important to
Conceivable.
communicate with them.
Yeah,
They do,
communicate what's
they
done.
take the brush mower, and so they have, it's not keeping up with the challenges of the site, but they have their regularly scheduled, and in terms of where they go and that, to coordinate with when they're planning on doing that, because they do go and they clean up the trails as well.
So
I'm
they're
not sure.
responsible for the trails.
Right, so I'm not quite sure when they go through and when they do that.
Right, so that's a good idea to reach out to them. Even just to be partnering with them so they see us as allies and relationship building.
So Dennis, you're gonna do that?
yeah,
Is that your-
I'm gonna ask that question.
Yeah,
And then,
that'd be good.
but talking about
Yeah.
budget, I mean, it's a good, I know we're kind of jumping around, but we should talk about what, I think the Conservation Board should have a budget of some kind, for some of the events that we wanna do, such as Community Day or Earth Day or bringing in speakers.
Earth
So-
Day, like for next year.
Right, that's what I meant,
Yeah.
for Community Day and then Earth Day in
Mhm.
2020.
When does the fiscal year actually begin?
I guess
So the
September.
budget is ready in August, so we submit the budget in August and then it goes through an approval process.
That's from my understanding, yes,
So it's really a January to December, but we just
Oh,
have to
okay.
get it in so that they can review and get
Yeah,
everything together.
Okay.
I mean, she said, yeah, it's like, she's, you know, I have to get something, and I said, okay, we'll work on that and try to come
So
up
we have
with
to get
something.
something by when though?
Like a month from now, I
Oh,
would say
okay,
would probably
that's
be a good
fine.
timeline, yeah. You know.
So we'll do
And
deadline of
obviously,
August
I think it
15th.
might just be pieces coming together as a whole, it's like, Dennis, did you do this? Yes, I have this number, and whatever else we discuss, if you wanna do something that I'm not necessarily, you know, gonna be able to do it as familiar with, and then you give me that number, and I could just do line
Just
items,
keep
come up with a
plugging in
total,
one by
and
one.
exactly, yeah.
But you submit it.
Mm.
The
I
submission
believe
comes
so,
from
I
you.
believe
It
that's,
has
I
to,
believe
it
that's,
should.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay,
I believe
no, that
that's
makes
correct.
sense, I
Yep.
just so we're all know,
Yeah.
so we can
Yep.
make sure
One-
we get
one-
everything
Yeah.
into the,
Right.
You're our,
into the queue.
You're our,
Yeah,
you're
no,
our
that's,
guy.
that was my understanding,
Right.
yes,
That's great.
so,
Cause we never had
There's
we
zero
collective,
budget.
there
The
was
first time
never
we've
been
ever
a
been
budget,
really
right?
asked
So
for
this
it.
is the first time
Right.
for not just
Okay.
new, but all.
And in
Okay.
fact, I think
For
quite
any-
honestly, I'm just gonna be interested to see what our budget really can be, because I don't know how much money the town, I don't know how they're dealing with all the other issues, you know, the overrun cost of this and everything, so maybe we have to have two wish lists, or what could we cut out, kind of
Like
thing.
the want and need kind of thing. What do we
Well,
really need?
yeah,
What
what's
do
the
we
bare bones
wish-
budget
The wish
with,
list and the
you know,
actual.
option A or option B, maybe, I don't know if there's a minimum or maximum.
Or we go in with a number and then they'll just say, well, no, you get like half that, and then you sort of
Cause we've
re-
never gotten
And then
anything,
we-
that's
right,
what's so
exactly.
hard,
And
and I
then
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, we've configured, so let's
Other
do
boards
the,
get
not like
money.
crazy list, but like what's our plan?
right,
So we
right.
wanna do stuff with
So
Glacier.
Okay, but
Right.
that
But
has
the
separate funding, so
Oh, that's
I don't
right, I'm
think-
sorry, all right,
so
you're right,
that-
you're right, you're absolutely
Actually,
right.
get a separate funding,
Right.
then that could be used for
Well,
the cost of
but so for the
planting
budget,
the
tree
trees.
planting, the Earth Day speaker.
Right.
Possibly.
But why are we, I'm just curious about something, I mean, if we're, obviously Glacier has a lot of issues,
Yeah,
is there enough room to put these trees
Oh gosh, yes.
oh yeah,
sorry,
I think you
speaking
can put
Without-
them anywhere.
without like
Steve
interfering with the
thought so,
stuff.
having seen before, not
Okay.
having, so, yeah.
Yeah, so it actually, they had specified as an arboretum, so the original intent, and they have lost many trees with the storms.
Okay.
And there was no tree replacement, they did the meadow planting, They did something with invasives out of the wetland area, the pond.
They cleared
Um,
some stuff
right.
too.
But there had not been a tree replacement, and so
It's not that
that's
many trees.
actually
There aren't.
So maybe we should use the funds from the trust.
Yeah, it's possible we could do that too. That's
for
true.
tree planting.
That's a possibility. But if the Parks and Rec can get involved, why not?
Right,
But I don't know the nuances.
right.
Yeah, no, there was, when Steve mentioned, he didn't make it sound like that there was guarantee behind that, but that's sort of your first reach out for help. And then, to be fair to you, as I'm writing the note, then if that doesn't come to fruition, would we then have opportunity under the tree bank fund, because it's town property, and then would that be separate from Glacier?
How those pieces
Right.
fit together.
These are
Yeah,
all
I
thi-
don't
these
know.
are all
Yeah,
things a month
yeah.
in, I don't have the
Yeah,
answer
no,
here,
I
so
know.
I'm trying to,
Sabrina
okay.
probably is good at that.
Yes, no, I,
Right.
she'll definitely wanna do a debrief with me in the
Yeah,
morning,
no,
and I'll
that
be like,
makes
great,
sense.
you're glad
Right.
you're here, and then, right,
Perfect.
so,
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance we
Yep.
don't know.
so. Okay, so at least, yeah, that was the last thing I wrote down, and that's why, and, you know, that probably would tie in at some level to the, you know, enhancement, creation, control, you know, and, you know, where do you think, you know, would you want them proximal to trails, would you want them more off into sort of areas that aren't as interacted as often by those that just are looking for the casual walk and, you know, more, so, I guess, yeah, that's sight unseen, I don't have an answer, yeah, for that, so. Okay.
That's great.
All right. Okay, so, right, I know you guys had mentioned pollinator pathways, so I was wondering, if there's any value, and if you're not ready to move on, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
No,
Because I know
go,
you're-
go,
No,
you're
no,
right.
go
Okay.
ahead. I'm just curious.
Okay, all right.
I like to look at plant lists.
There's nothing wrong with that. So, being a Wildflower Island guide and volunteer at T-Town, in season, and obviously a small segment of T-Town, I guess, falls into Newcastle, but it's the same eco-region, so it's the same thing to me. So, each week, Julie Wu, who's a tremendous woman, who goes out every, and this year it's every Wednesday on Wildflower Island, and she comes up with a bloom list. And the bloom list is not just what is flowering on the island proper, but then she'll go off to these areas, and she calls them the highlights of the woods. So, obviously, it's not exhaustive to what maybe you're looking at, but I would thought maybe if people would be interested in, you know, if I plant, when can I anticipate it would be in bloom, or, you know, oh, what's coming into bloom, and, you know, what resources would you have individually other than maybe looking at your own properties or something to that effect. I just thought that this would provide an opportunity, sort of like, just a little bit of an expanding database, that if you wanted to include, I didn't know what your mechanism would be. Would it be like, you know, emailing members on a list? Would it be a spot on a website or something like that, but where you could sort of go and
Sounds
look
like a good website.
to, you know, say, hey, this is what's blooming this week
Yeah.
at T-Town, you know, on Wildflower Island and, you know, adjacent its woods. And then, you know, if people were interested, they could see, you know, like what
Sure.
there was blooming and
We
not.
can
So,
try that in the succession of bloom. There's a much less exhaustive one that's really just basically about 25 species on the backside, right? Where they talk about the
Oh,
spring
I see
through
what you're
fall
saying, for
Um,
pollinators.
for pollinator pathways, so that you're covering. And I also think that if that's okay, we have a new website, I'm so grateful, that we have a webmaster, she's wonderful, she comes from Greenwich Audubon. And so putting that on the website, because we're talking about how we want to structure and putting that, one of the comments is with a street, a limited succession of bloom, that some people, the feedback from some of the people who are planting native, exclusively native gardens, they're feeling that there's not the punch, right? That there are periods where there are gaps when they go straight natives, and this would be the detailed list that would be
Right.
helpful. So
and it's funny you say that, because in just the two lists that I happened to choose, June 27th, on the island, there were 34 plants included that were flowering. Now that we're on July 11th, that's cut in half to 17. That is the some reality, I guess, at
That's-
some level, you
yeah.
know, at least
The
what's
late
planted
spring
there,
or
but it's
early
true.
fall,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
late-
May
late
is their
summer,
high
early
time
fall.
because of the lady slippers and
Right,
whatnot,
that's
so,
what I
but,
heard.
you know, as far as,
After the spring ephemerals.
yeah, you know, like that first week in April, the list is kinda short, and then all of a sudden you come into summer, and it's like, yeah, it's amazing how much it drops from, you know, May, so you bring up a good point, that's
Yeah.
kind of the, yeah.
But that's more information, so there's some people who are just kind of, you know, dipping their toe in, and others who are saying, I want more. I
Yeah.
want more blooms, I want, you know, more pollinators in my garden, what am I missing? And
Right.
something specific like that could be very useful.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you know, having planted it in uplands when we were doing wetland restorations, right, I just remember, you know, black-eyed Susan, you know, it's probably underrated, but like that's just one plant here that I look at, and I have a neighbor at home, like, there's like plants coming through the crack, the pavement crack in the sidewalk, you know, and it's like, so it's, you know, migrating away, and I'm like, oh, good, it's nice to see something that's like, you know, not a, you know, Asian escape, you know
Yeah,
what I mean,
yeah,
that's like
that's
breaking its
trying
way
to
through,
grow.
whatever, it says, this is something that's like, you know, I'm gonna here to stay and do my best with whatever substrate you give me, so I thought that was kinda funny. So, okay, so that's something that I, you know, I have these and, you know, I could provide at the end of the year, you know, whoever is interested, I could, or all of you, just provide you, this is the T-Town list from 2019,
Well, this could
you
also be on
know.
our website.
Yeah, do they
Yeah.
have soft copies, that's what we do.
Yeah, if there's.
For the, could we post
These come
it?
as PDFs
Yeah, that's
to me,
perfect.
so,
So
We
we'll
could put
just-
it on the conservation
Yes,
board website,
exactly.
Yeah.
or even part of if we were doing a letter, like
And
a
we could link to
conservation,
that.
yeah,
Right, that
Okay.
would be
monthly
great for
letter
our
or something,
website.
Should
oh,
I-
here's what to link.
I mean, I may not,
Yeah.
you know, cause now we're coming to, this is probably only gonna continue for another month and a half, so that's why I'm saying it might be best for me, it may just be a single comprehensive at the end of the year, but at least it's a snapshot of
Yeah,
2019.
yeah.
so-
That's fine, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Alright.
cool.
that I can do.
Phenology standpoint
Yeah.
alone, it would be
Right.
interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so, comprehensive. T10, okay, I'm glad that went over well. Julie will be thrilled when I see her, hopefully she's there in August to poke fun of my presentation, okay. T-Town, flower bloom list, I don't know what that means, okay. Okay, let's see.
So, you know, we just did a pollinator week that Sue mentioned it, and it was a really nice collaborative effort
Something else.
between the Conservation Board, Newcastle Healthy Arts, Pollinator Pathways Coalition, Garden Club, the Learning Center, the Native Plant Learning Garden at Horace Greeley, even the Daughters of the American Revolution, Polly Cooper chapter, they have a whole pollinator initiative.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was a really, we did like a kids table, we had,
Nursery
you know,
school.
nursery school, oh, the right.
Yeah,
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah.
The Quaker Nursery School, and it was Friends Nursery School. And it was just a really lovely to see so many people come out.
Right.
And with a lot of questions, we brought the Pollinator Pathways map. So there's a real appetite now. I think we finally, I mean, even it's like, as the Conservation Board has reached critical mass in terms of membership, the community seems like it's more on their radar. So it's almost like, how do we continue to capture that? And maybe that's where the speaker comes in, or speakers,
And-
continuing to engage.
Sorry to jump in there, but you just reminded me of something. So I was on the Pollinator Pathway website, and on the Bedford page, they have a link to sign up, put your name on the thing. So I know you sent out that survey, but theirs was simply just a link. And you just
Right there,
click
you
on
can
it,
do it.
and
It's
you
great.
just write your name
Yeah.
and address, and you can be on the pathway. Because we wanna, as I think you probably heard the back, we wanna capture names, so on Community Day, we could be out there with a booth, or separate from Conservation Board, Pollinator Pathway would be there with a map of Newcastle that would have, you know, all the pathways, all the
Yeah.
properties that
Have signed up.
have signed up can be highlighted in
Green.
an identified
Yeah.
color, like green or something.
And there are future volunteers
Right.
too.
Did I give everybody the link to the
You
Google
gave it,
Doc?
I thought it was good. The Google Doc or the survey you set up?
It's a survey, but it's a
The
Google
survey,
Doc,
yeah.
it's a Google form.
I saw it, did you?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while, I don't even know if
I
people
thought it was
responded.
fine.
No, I've
Did
sent
you
it,
see
we've
it?
sent it
I
out.
saw it and
I
I
had-
filled it
I
out
had no
wrong, so she
changes,
had
so
to
I
fix
didn't
it.
see it.
It's like,
No, but
I gave you editing and
It's
you
not
edited
live,
it.
oh, gotcha, you edit, but it's
Yeah.
not live, it's just,
It is live,
oh, it is?
it is live.
Oh.
Is it on
Whoever
our
had it,
conservation board page?
And
where's
one
the
person,
space?
the last time I looked, there was one person who signed up.
Oh,
Wait, where is
we
it
have a
on?
whole-
Yeah, where,
It's
where's
on
it
Google.
housed?
No,
Where is
where?
it accessible?
Posted.
Drive.
In other words, if a
Yeah.
person in town would have
Whoever
to
we
tell-
sent that link to that time,
So they have to receive the link, we haven't put it on any of the pages.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll
that's
send
what I
you
meant,
out-
yeah.
I think
So that we have to
I
do.
can't remember if I gave everybody the link or not, but I'll look and see.
Okay.
Cause we should put that on our website, but
Yeah.
that should also be, like, if we're gonna resurrect the, conservation notes and stuff and get into the town newsletter.
That could be on there
That's a
too.
place.
That's good,
Yeah.
It should be on every single thing we send out, sign up to be
Yeah.
on the
Well,
thing.
there's a link
Like,
that we get
there's
for
a link.
pollinator pathway on, and with the conservation, then that goes to every single, well, not everyone has opted in, that's true.
It could be, I mean, the
Anyway.
link could be on the Pollinator Pathways page, it could be on the Conservation Board page, it could be, we could put it on the Healthy Yards Facebook page, I mean, we could put it,
But we should put it in the
Out
town
there.
newsletter.
Yeah.
well, that's
Oh,
true,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
link to it, right, and then it goes wherever it's housed.
And just to go back to, so this pollinator pathway, which I'm just envisioning is gonna end up being a GIS map, so would it be
Yeah.
for Community Day 20 or Community Day
19,
19.
When is
which
that?
is September 14th,
Thank you.
from 10 to 3.
Okay,
And
Uh,
Kellen was on board with that.
he was.
Yeah.
Kellen is now on board with fatherhood, so we haven't seen him in
Oh.
a few
Oh,
months, so
yeah.
that's why.
Wonderful.
I believe he had a girl,
Oh.
so, yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, that's very sweet.
When we get home, I can't tell.
Yeah, the day of Pollinator Week, we had 29 people sign up for Pollinator Pathways. And people were stopping and showing me exactly where they lived, even though the road signs, the road
Yeah,
maps
yeah,
aren't there,
that's
they were
awesome.
going and saying, I live here, can I be on it? It's like, yes, you're in Newcastle, just, so people are really excited about it.
Great.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Okay,
That's great.
Next,
Yeah,
okay, so on the way out today, Steve's comment to me was, I don't envision DPW pulling weeds, and I said, okay. But I at least wanted to share, because then something like this may be helpful in another realm, you may have a copy, I didn't know if you
Yeah,
did or
this is
didn't.
great.
So, yeah, so this is something where, I mean, I have it electronically as a PDF, but if you wanted to
Just your
have this as a laminated document so that it would survive either Community Day or something to that effect, and then if you wanted to make copies available, this is something that I thought was neat and interesting, and when my wife emailed me, gee, do
Mistaken
you know what
identity.
hogweed is? I said, you bet I do. I said, I've never seen it and I really don't wanna see it, so.
yeah,
So it has all of that, but that's a very, the pictures are good, the
Yeah,
descriptions are
it's
brief,
a good document.
and it doesn't get into like plant morphology and,
Doesn't get visuals.
you're gonna
Yeah.
turn 90% of the people off right away, cause they're not
Exactly.
gonna know.
So Dennis, just to get back to Steve's point about the DPW and the rec department, the purpose of that, maybe they're not gonna pull weeds, but we did think that there was an opportunity to at least do just sort of basic
Best
identification.
practices.
Right.
And then best practices so like the big 5 invasive plants, like barberry, burning bush, like the.
Or what's
the-
coming down the
basically-
pike to watch out for.
Right.
And it also
Right,
clues
yeah.
them into what they shouldn't pull,
Right,
like you
and
don't want
should-
to pull common
don't-
milkweed.
Right, don't
Right,
pull
right.
milkweed or mow it down, right?
Yeah, I would think they would be
Right.
more worried about like, okay, here's Oriental bittersweet, it's gonna wrap around the tree and kill a town tree, like
Yeah.
I could see
Yes.
turning them onto that.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
I don't, some of the other things might be
Maybe
harder
not,
to,
maybe,
yeah,
but I
I
don't
know
know,
what you're saying, okay,
but I think
We
the
have to frame
thought
it,
was, or
figure
the
out how to frame it,
Yeah, I
make
understand.
it
but the
look
thought
good.
and the concern though was that they don't know any of that stuff.
right.
Right,
So there needs to be some kind of in-service training on the basics.
right.
So, are we the best people to do the training? I don't know, we're none of us are teachers or whatever, but we all have like the passion. So, I mean, even if it's like taking one of these things and going through and saying like, we're just gonna show you these 5 plants or 10 plants,
Right, with support on that.
it's okay to mow these, but don't mow.
Right.
Well,
The-
Missy is
the-
an experienced teacher, she teaches at Westchester
Well,
Community.
that's-
But actually, do we have
Nursery
the
school. Nursery school.
copy of the town
Thanks.
integrated pest management program? So there is,
I'll write that down.
there is, so what was this, Bob Snyder?
Yes, he was the rec
Before
department,
he
yeah.
left, there was, he worked on that. the details of which I cannot completely remember, and actually Park and Recs, they
Yeah.
do weed.
Yes.
They weed the traffic triangles. The garden would plant, but then we turn that over to the town, and then sometimes we accept things back like Pocket Park, so it's not always a one-way. Sometimes it's a
Right.
give back, that we assume the responsibility for the maintenance, but even on some of the things like the small amount of grass, we work together with them on that. So they actually do, and do work on some weeding and identification. I think in the context of the conversation with in town policy on invasive plants, it takes on a whole new meaning. They are literally, we're driving by randomly, they're going into everywhere. They can be seeing things, and wherever we have the city sidewalks, they're maintaining. So those are kind of a higher priority. Not only do people see them, but that is also, they have to shovel snow. This is seasonally, they're going over these areas. So it's really, we can get information from them about what they're seeing and also help so that they're able to make the most effective use of the time with that. We can even eventually be developing planting that will reduce the load of working. So we do an underplanting with shrubs. They don't have to mow. They don't have to weed whack.
Or native grasses,
Right.
you know,
They don't have to be
carrots,
mowed at
carrots,
all.
Yeah,
Right.
all
So-
carrots.
And we're trying to do that when we're planning and rethinking the traffic triangles, so to make them much more on the management side,
Right.
instead of just the
Mulch,
previous
Low
one
maintenance,
is
we
Yeah,
can
like-
create low maintenance.
Like 4 plants and
opportunity.
brown mulch is a recipe for high expense,
Yeah, they have to mulch it every year, so.
mulch
yeah.
it every year,
Less
weed it
expensive,
every
less maintenance.
other week, you know, so let's use better practices to.
Right, and then the other thing is that some of the towns, what they do is they mow, they'll do a cues to care, and they will leave a larger area, and they just mow edges, so that they do allow for grasses and wild. You can't do it everywhere if you have the invasives moving in, but a lot of towns are adopting that, where instead of just mowing the entire area, they'll mow a 4 to 5 foot swath along the edges just to neaten and then allow the grasses.
Make it
Natural meadow, yeah.
So they just mow it once a year then or something like that to keep it a meadow or?
Well, so that's an excellent question. The maintenance of a meadow is a very complicated issue. So eventually, yes, they do go in the middle to mow. How often in the season? But it's much
Yeah,
less than what
right.
they do for the
Right, for the
routine
regular.
mowing.
Right,
So
and
it's
that
just
would
doing the
save
edges.
the town money, right?
Right.
So,
And this topic came up today on Facebook. I mean, that the whole concept of other towns, countries are doing, leaving the area along roadways when it's not a
Right.
safety issue, you know, when it's not a
Right, 'cause
visibility
there's
issue.
a lot of, right, yeah,
And
there's a
so
lot of-
there's an opportunity, you know, I don't know, this is kind of beyond the scope of
Safety
this,
is
but
the
can we
first,
work
yeah.
with these folks in DPW to kind of say, you know, this is a great area that you don't need to touch, you know, versus this area that needs to be plowed. So we can be an ally and work in tandem with them to support their efforts so that they can distinguish. And it's good for the environment, it's you know, lets them focus on other things.
Right.
County roads might be easier than state in terms of what they do with that, in terms of the county had the ordinance with native plants on that.
True.
But they also, they
That's a
spray
good point.
Roundup along every,
Yeah,
with the
they do.
barriers.
Right,
So-
underneath the barriers, yeah.
They spray that
And which
least-
barriers?
so highway
along Sawmill,
Yeah,
you will
you can
see
see it.
the browned out, and actually where they have a large section by
I
Pleasantville.
see them where they didn't.
What's the
right
rationale
now,
for that?
too.
For them to use Roundup?
It's a sight line, I'm not justifying, but it's a sight line, so where they have the metal barriers, they do spray. Then the question is, some of the places where they have the metal barriers, they don't have to. You're supposed to have if it's a drop off, but if it's not a certain change in elevation, those are just old barriers that are there. There's a lot that can be done. Delaware is a little bit more further along with that, but I know that in New York and Connecticut, there is the spraying along the road, those barriers at the side of the road.
So even though there's this great county legislation around native plants, they're
It
still
depends on who
using,
owns the
yeah,
road.
they're still
layers.
So layers of.
Yeah, it goes under traffic safety, and
Yeah.
same with, right, I mean, your utility lines are gonna be whacked all the
Right,
time, you're
right,
just
yeah.
gonna see that and
Right.
see a
And
porcelain
MTA too,
berry
I
and
think
that's
there's
the way it goes, yeah.
Right.
The MTA does stuff too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay,
that's
I'll
what
look-
that's all
I'll
about.
look into that, okay, and I'll look into see, cause you said town integrated pest management plan, that was the title?
Oh, yeah, so they should have the, their
Yeah, that
monitoring
Steve
and what
was-
they're doing with that. There's a
Okay.
lot with turf care that
Right.
can make it easier. I know that this area is just, it's a swamp. I mean,
Right.
just to be honest, the low-lying areas, what they have to try to get grass to grow on is a challenge.
Right,
And so there are, materials with that might be of use for that, and I don't know what is in this. I know that before he was leaving, that this is what he was working on.
Okay.
But
It'd be
not
great
sure
to
I think
what's
it's
in
been
it.
a strategy for a while for the town, the integrated pest management,
Maybe Dennis, with your,
for years.
now that you're here, like here, you could ask about it and say like, you've heard about it, we'd like to see it, but we'd like to see it too.
sure,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely, okay, and just back to the, with respect to, let's say we get to a point where you're able to like identify, like I'm thinking maybe for DPW in areas that you don't wanna mow, instead of like going in with 4, 8, 12, could we just start with a test plot and just sort of see how
Like a
that
little
goes?
pilot
Yeah,
project.
cause it almost,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
because it would, cause I'd almost like, just thinking if I was on the other end and I'm like, what 12 new things that I have very little knowledge
Right.
of do I have to now do in the
Right,
next
no, of
whatever
course,
months
no,
to,
no,
and,
absolutely.
and
Right.
what's the
Baby
guarantee that it'll
steps.
be successful, and it's a fair
Very
response, so it's like, okay, you have to,
Oh, one.
have your data and, yep,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
alright,
that's
Building
fine.
data is good.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the goal truly is to make it easier. So when we're planting, in terms of making it easier to identify, when we did the shed planting, we do all of that maintenance ourselves because it is hard with the nodding onions,
Some
And
things in the beginning, it's difficult,
it
yeah,
is, and
can
so
be.
even when someone takes over that garden, it's just to get used to the plants on that, so yeah, to make it, to simplify the management, and there's more than enough work that needs to be done, and leftover time can be removing those vines from trees. So
Right.
that we save the trees, otherwise, down the road, we're, replacing large trees.
right,
And it's mission, it becomes almost like a mission driven if it has context for them. So it's not just a task, but it will ultimately help them
Right.
streamline their work,
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
have an impact.
yeah, I just, you have to prove less is more, I think, and then after that we go,
Oh, yeah.
yep, I got you.
And so just another thing from background, I think that we even, I don't remember what we did with it, but we were proposing to do some demonstration gardens that
Yes, good point.
right?
What
So-
are the statuses of that,
Right.
Stream mitigation?
the stream
Yeah, I
mitigation
really
was
wanted-
part of it.
Yes, can I just mention something
Yeah.
quick? I can't remember what. Excuse me, it was one of the many vigils that we've had downtown near the
Gazebo.
gazebo. And I stayed afterwards and walked along that stream.
Yeah.
It was full of life. I mean, I've never actually walked there. And I remember talking in a past meeting about the gas station and the gas stations expanding their parking and it's very compelling. I almost wish that we could do a site visit, just a quick visit over there at some point. It astonished me how much life there was on that little stream, and I suddenly felt like a personal concern that what is happening, and then I thought, well, let me bring this back to the conservation
Yeah.
board, because I know we talked about it, and I'm so curious whether you could clue us into, at some point soon, what is the status?
Right.
And is there anything that the conservation board can weigh in on in terms of what the resolution is there, in terms of, thinking about protecting the life.
And the stream you're talking about is the one by the gas
So
station,
that's,
behind the gazebo.
that's a
Behind the
separate
gazebo.
project.
And then that's a different
Yes,
one, because
yes,
there's,
I know.
so there's
Oh,
a
okay, I'm
gas
confusing it
station
now.
project
Right.
is the one by that gas station. Then,
I think they're close though. The gazebo is, the stream is between the gazebo and the gas
right,
station.
right, no, I understand, but, and then
So
also
you're
when we're
thinking
thinking about the
one
gazebo,
near the town hall.
this
Yeah,
one
this
here
one,
is when they talk about
the
stream
basketball.
mitigation
Right,
project,
right.
they're talking about that one.
So,
Right.
so the gazebo is reflective of a town project and the gas station is a private applicant?
Yes.
Okay,
And there's
Well,
some
I would
deal
see-
or some overlap or some
I don't know.
So the
They
way
have to
I
come
would
back with a
phrase
better
it
plan, right? That's where, cause Sabrina this is the meeting that Sabrina
Yeah.
came to. So
Right.
my understanding is they put an application, it had not been approved.
The gas station put
The
it to
gas station.
expand their parking lot near the
Right.
gazebo.
And so that's an area that needs to be addressed because it's problematic there, there's an erosion problem, there's something going on with an unstable site. So they asked them to come back again and it would be on them to
Make a viable proposal that
to,
could.
yeah, to basically pay for doing
Right.
that, and that's on the far end. And then the stream mitigation,
This
I
one.
thought had already been approved, I don't know how it left with Steve, but he was going to actually do the plant list, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Right along
Yeah.
the pond.
and it was tied in with
That's
the
where I see
basketball
that you
court.
probably have more control, because if
Right.
the private applicant has to come up with a plan
Right.
that then
And
we
they
would
haven't
need to
come back
approve,
with
they
a
have to guarantee
Right.
either the 5 or 10 year period, and I think there could be potential concern, I've only been here a month, but I'm just thinking about my former life, that if I'm a private applicant and I'm not meeting my restoration or planting goals, and there were members of a town that were intervening and doing, you know, I could see where that would get ugly quickly and be like, well, how do you know that it's me and my plan and my design and my landscape architect or my wetland restorer, you know, other people have been putting their hands in it, so that's why I
So
was
there's what, we don't
wondering.
know what the status is, we don't know what the timeline is, we don't know anything about that. So
Right.
since I know you're new, you're gonna have a huge list of things to go back to Sabrina, but one of the other things to add on your list is what's going on with the gas station
Well,
and
yeah,
that,
Steve
you know?
is here a couple days a week, so I could
Right.
ask
Okay.
some of those questions.
And then the second question is,
The stream.
what's going on with the stream mitigation?
And I know
And-
it's tied with a basketball court, so that
Right.
sounds really weird, but there is going to be a loss of pervious surface with the basketball court going in. So my understanding is that was part of the impetus for they're already disturbing it and they're going to go through it, and so this would be the time to do
Timing.
this.
Yeah.
Because you're already moving all of that soil and to, go along the edges on that. So I thought he had a plant list, we didn't see the plant list, so we don't know.
And that was for, as we're
That's
calling
the
the
stream
gaz-
mitigation.
gazebo.
No.
This is the one by the-
Stream mitigation, that's this one, going back to the basketball court.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the
Between town
first
hall
one
and
is
fields.
the
thank you.
gazebo gas station stream.
Right,
They're both streams, but
Right.
different ones.
right.
And then this one is stream mitigation
Okay.
by the town hall going toward the basketball.
Okay, 2 projects, right?
Right,
They're
one
two.
is parking
Okay.
lot and one is
So
stream
fair.
mitigation.
Yeah,
I
parking
have a
lot,
question.
Karen has, yeah.
I have a question, when it comes to, obviously, the planning board is gonna be the one that reviews the gas station situation.
Right,
Now,
And the ERB, I suppose, right?
Mark
is
of the
there, I
wetlands.
mean, can we look at anything, I mean, not that we're only an advisory committee, we're
Right.
not a permitting committee. But, and maybe it's overstepping bounds, I mean, can we get involved in things like that? Or are you saying that really we cannot, you would not promote that because,
I think there's a public comment period for a private applicant, and that's when the public
but as the
has
board,
the opportunity to get involved, but
But-
as an advisory board, are you allowed to quote unquote put your hands into
right,
their application,
Mhm.
their mitigation plan? I think it's just from, my opinion would be just from a comment perspective, but not from a dictatorial directive.
Jurisdiction, there's no
Perspective,
jurisdiction.
no,
yeah.
I wouldn't say as I don't
Yeah.
think we have that kind of power, but to be able to look at it and, again,
Well,
comment on it,
Yes.
because.
I think the answer is yes, because if it comes up before ERB, cause those used to be joint meetings anyway, Conservation Board, ERB, we used
Well-
to see those applications.
But we only saw them because they were before the permitting, really, that was what it was
Oh,
all about.
I suppose that's
Mhm.
true, yeah.
So, yeah, that
You're
was
right,
really
it's
it.
true.
There was a time where we
So-
talked about
Oh, that makes
having
sense, yeah.
someone from because we used to meet together.
Mhm.
And so the beauty, it's wonderful that we're meeting on our own now, but the beauty of meeting together was whenever an application would come before the ERB, we could kind of voice the conservation
Right.
board concerns.
Mhm.
So what's happened
Yeah.
since this division now is we don't have that voice there.
Right,
So that's another topic,
Well,
but
can
it's
we
something
get
for us
that
to
voice?
I think we should think about it.
I
whether we
mean,
can-
not
Well, it's
in
kind
a
of going to other-
dictatorial sense or anything, or overstepping.
right, so.
But can we have more, since we've been
Mhm.
separated,
Right.
in essence, what's happened is the conservation board might make comments that
Okay.
might be taken under advisement by the permitting
Mhm.
board.
Okay, so I'm
Now
almost
we're
raising it as like
separated, so-
outside of public hearing process.
Yes.
Okay,
I'd be curious.
But someone
That
has
would
to
be
be
great if we could
willing
find
to
some
commit
way
to
to
go
do
to
just go to the other meetings.
Just because, I mean, the
I
level
mean,
of,
that's sort of what Steve was doing.
everyone knows
I
so
imagine
much,
Dennis is doing.
or,
Anything that has to do with like plantings, they should definitely run it by.
yeah, we're not gonna tell them what to do,
Right,
but we're
right.
just saying, hey,
But
maybe
also-
you
Well,
do this
speaking of
instead
that,
We're, yeah.
Speaking of that though, like remember there was a couple weeks ago they were gonna do something at the gazebo where they were gonna make a garden like for
Yeah.
Holocaust Memorial.
Oh,
And the question I had was who's picking those plants? So, that's another one to add on to the list.
Yes, they chose a landscape design, they named it, I just read it in the town newsletter.
Oh, you did? So just check on that one, like make, you
But
know.
also, I think
But that's not
we're
that-
all, as a group, kind of plant people, invasive species removal people, habitat, wildlife, you know, just to kind of put us all in a bucket. But we have to kind of keep sight of the mission of the conservation board that the town put forth. And I think it is really identifying and preserving open spaces.
Yeah.
So I know that there's not a lot of those left, it seems, but I just wanna kind of put that out on the public
know.
record that, you know, that's part of what our mission is. I mean, I could talk plants all day, but, and I know we've already come up with our 2019 objectives, and one of them is education and outreach, and I think that's really important to get people and landowners thinking about their land and how that affects everything in stewardship, et cetera.
Right.
So I don't mean to get off, but I just,
It's not off, cause
I
that
think
is
that's-
actually what.
I mean, not off this general
Right.
topic, but it just,
It is, because that's, you know, with conservation board, that's what I really thought that it was, and you're right, there have been a decreasing trend over time in terms of people who are turning land over for conservation, and it's shifted into management
should,
of
that's
the
a good,
properties
yeah.
that we have,
So
that is
we're
true.
help manage.
But there's part of our education should be about reminding people that yes, you can donate this. You know what I mean? To remind people that this is what had happened and how we are benefiting from what people donated in the 60s and 70s. And it doesn't have to be a 100-acre glacier. It can be the lot next to you. We had the apiary. There are options as
Laura's
Yeah.
as there's development, there is also a lot that we can do, to set something aside, and Steve did a great job, he showed us on the map with that. So yeah, I think that in
We
the
just should lose
conservation
sight of
board-
that
Yeah,
when we're doing our
that's-
education materials, et
Right.
cetera, and outreach,
Yeah,
and that's part
I
of
haven't
it.
even thought of that, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of management, they wanted to plant daffodils because there was an organization for each one of the children who lost their lives. So they were going to get the daffodils from this particular source, keeps track of the numbers that are planted until they get to 500,000. One of the complications that we had in terms of management is that it is hard with the foliage left over, and then EC2 with maintenance when the lawn crews come through to mow over, and eventually the bulbs weaken and die out. And especially in this context, you would want to have this set up so they're going to multiply, not diminish over time. So we talked about underplanting or something that would be a clear identifier that this is a no-mow, or even going with no-mow zones throughout the town that we can do for wildlife corridors. But nonetheless, in this particular context, I think that what they want to do is up to them, but we're just saying from a perspective of previously, we planted the ill-fated duck pond. Now needless to say, I don't know, that has its invasive problems, but in other sites, it was mowing and weed whacking, eventually diminishing the bulbs until they have not come back. So,
That's part of that education management training that we're
Exactly.
talking about.
right,
yeah.
so, and you wouldn't expect the applicant to know that because they have their project and that's great, but I think that's what we can add to, we're not trying to butt in, but we're just trying to make it easier for the town, for the people who are going to do the maintenance as well. It's like a go-between,
It would be
kind of.
interesting if we could find the appropriate way for us to have a voice in those without becoming onerous and without intruding too much on a dictatorial level,
Right.
but finding that right balance as an ally to, you know,
Yeah, that's why
A resource.
I still go back to
A
like,
resource.
reason.
get a candidate site that you all feel would be, you know, and that, then you have something to go forward with, and you could, you know, even from your perspective, you can strengthen your sort of position, just looking at one thing where when you start expanding, it's hard to make everything
Right.
fit one size, you know, so
Yeah.
it's like, it's like, you know, again, you could
Well, I think we
phrase it
talked
however
about
you
that
want,
with the stream mitigation as one of the sites, cause it was,
Right in the middle of a ball field.
right,
And
It's-
very public, it's also where the Bell School does their stream study.
right.
Oh, so yeah, even better.
Yeah, they do it in across from the library, and then they follow the stream as it is under the road.
Okay.
So the stream would also be over at the library,
Yeah.
this stream, right, so is that being dealt with as well?
I don't know.
So
part of the
so the
construction project.
library, so there is discussion on the library, so when they did their parking lot on that, they did not touch the stream on that, but there is discussion that some of the shrubs are starting to, that bank is eroding. And the euonymus, the winged euonymus, they're looking to redo that, of course, in the middle of this construction right now, they don't wanna think about anything.
Yeah.
But after the construction's done, they have to redo the main parking lot. And when they do that is the time to talk about
That-
planting,
Oh, wouldn't that be
know
great if they
exactly
could get rid of all that?
which with a lovely replacement of a hedge.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting, if
Landscape
there
buffer.
is, I can't remember if they're crab apples or service berries, but there is
Oh,
a strip of trees that annually has the cedar waxwings coming in. So if you could, well, maybe it's part of conservation board, I don't know, or something that we do as individuals, but to try to save that strip, I think would be
That's on
really,
the other side.
because it's in the main parking lot.
It's
So
the last slide of my tree presentation,
Old
I can't
ones
remember the
have-
species,
many of them
I know
have
we have a
died,
cedar
but that's
waxwing on there for that reason.
Yeah, they love
Okay,
berries.
yeah,
Anyway.
Okay,
my bad, okay.
Can I just mention one quick
So-
thing to pick up on what Missy was saying about the role of the conservation board in open land? And this is not a priority for your to-do list, so I don't wanna.
No, go ahead, say it.
I remember, I think Steve was supposed to, at some point, almost print out a list for us of what property was still out there, right? Unutilized property.
Oh, I
Remember
areas
that?
that have been identified for possible,
It was almost like,
Conservation.
you know, yeah, cause we're thinking about what open land is there still? In other words, what big tracts of land are there? In other words, like looking at ownership of,
Right,
you know,
it could- no,
the
they could still
open
be private.
woodlands. Say it again?
They
This
could
would
still be private.
Yeah, maybe,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
So just to kind of get a sense of, because as our town, you know, when we think about the bucolicness of
oh,
our
there's some
town,
like
Right.
how, where we
report
headed and
or something that showed like what
what's left there that-
percentage is on,
just to kind of have a
yeah, it's
basic
not,
overview.
I think he was,
Oh,
his point was
still
saying
out
it
there.
hasn't
Okay.
changed all that much.
Wasn't he looking at tax law?
Does that make sense?
I don't know, but-
You know, I know what you're saying, yeah,
Yeah.
that,
And again, not a priority, but it would be interesting
Right.
to see that, so that we have some overall sense of where, what the
That is not
woodlands
market
that are still
adjacent to
look like.
yeah, that's one I found too. I thought we saw something that showed like,
different colors, so we saw the color coded.
Oh, I
we
wasn't
saw-
here that day, then, cause I remember you guys talking about it, and then,
It was color coded, and there, so what was, there were, whether it distinguished between, any development on that land or not is what I am not sure about.
this was
oh wait,
Town of Newcastle
years
Open
ago,
Space
right?
Program,
Yeah,
open space program.
open space.
So it doesn't have a year here, but median home price was $450.
it was many years ago.
FYI, yeah. Newcastle Open
Doesn't
Space,
apply to
40-year
Maui.
trend. So
Yeah, no, that
so
would
maybe
count.
1998, so 1958, 66% was undeveloped,
Oh, right.
10,000
Yeah.
acres, 66,
Undeveloped, I guess is
53,
the key word.
right,
Okay.
1984, 35%, and then by 1998, 24% undeveloped, of which it's like 3,500 acres.
Right, so is there any data between 98
And-
and now?
Yeah, and I remember
20
Steve
years
saying
later?
that it has not changed significantly data-wise. I do remember him saying that for sure, that it really hasn't changed.
I Kevin, for the wetland regulations, that'll.
Yeah,
all
probably.
Right, yeah, no, I think you're right, I mean, I don't think there's a lot left, and I think that we've done,
What's left is like
has been already, yeah, it's kind of been done, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't know what's
Yeah.
out there,
Right.
as in an updated format.
Okay,
Alright,
Okay, I wrote that down
yeah,
for you.
okay,
alright,
Okay,
so,
right, yeah, there was something, I know, obviously there could be a range of costs depending on what speaker, and these are just 5 that I threw down yesterday. The presentation was from a woman, also a volunteer, there's a couple actually volunteers in Wildflower Island who are herbalists, so if people are interested from the perspective of, you know, the benefits of plants as far as topical ingestion, you know, not necessarily nutritional, but, you know, from more of a holistic medicinal perspective. She only covered 4 plants yesterday, the 4 plants that she covered. You could rip them out and they'll be back, you know, as far as common plantain, common blue violet, one of my favorites, elderberry, and then any of the goldenrod she felt. So, you know, she just started with those because, you know, we only had, I guess, 45 minutes before I had to do an open gate day. But you know, I know from your perspective that I understand too, like, you know, yeah, I could talk about trees, plants, you know, what you wanna do, but it's amazing, like, sort of this purview of what that means in a mixed room, you know, like somebody else, they're not really interested in talking about getting their hands dirty or dropping to their knees to pull weeds or whatever, they wanna know like what it can do for them, you know what I mean? So, and I don't know if that would be helpful in any way to you moving forward in terms of trying to get more people interested, and then maybe, you know, we as individuals and or collectively as a group do the job of bridging that gap where it's like, well, you know, that's great you feel this way, and there's a way you can even do that yourself to help benefit yourself. It doesn't all have to be, you know, in a plastic bottle from Centrum or, you know, whatever else, you know, so that was kind of, you know, again, she's not on here, she just gave it yesterday, but that was my thinking sort of in like developing this list also, you know, if a speaker's gonna come in January, you know, is there an opportunity to do something that's not so veg focused, cause you're looking at something else, you know, so that's why I put my buddy down, Eugene, you know, like anything that, you know, these were just, you know, just some recommendations, cause I don't know if you had people in mind, I'm sure you know some of these names, and I just, this was like my brainstorm, and just hoping it would help, I don't know, that's kinda where I was
Yeah,
at, so.
no, Great.
It's great. It's
And
better
I've heard
catching
Charlie speak, I'm sorry.
yeah.
up. I was gonna say, we're gonna steal some of
Yeah,
his ideas
he's
from
the,
programming.
yeah, he's the, yeah.
Butterfly
a
moth,
lot.
I mean, he's fantastic.
Birds, butterfly, yep, yeah.
Well, you know, I literally have an email out to Doug Talmy, we've talked about trying to get Doug here. Because now we have kind of, and I put in my email to him, I've said this to him in person, I've seen him speak many times, and it's like a dream for a lot of us to bring him here. I've told him, the last time I saw him, he spoke in Darien earlier this year. And I kind of said, you know, we finally have, I think, critical mass to almost like co-sponsor Conservation Board, Pollinator Pathways, Healthy Yards, Learning Garden, the Chapel Garden Club. In other words, I think each of us could bring our constituencies to have critical mass to get him here. So I gave the best plea I could give, and I will let everyone know when I hear back. But
Okay.
you know, I kind of said, are you? And we thought, you know, would it be cheaper? We don't know how much it costs yet. Would it be? He's here a lot. He seems to be in Westchester, Southern
Oh, okay.
Connecticut a lot.
He does
So
a
can
lot
we
of
tag
talks.
it on to another talk? You know, so I let.
But have it here in Newcastle, right,
Yeah.
like,
So
or partner with
whether that will
Sawmill.
ever come to fruition,
Right.
but just so you know, that's kind of a dream. If we could make that happen. He have you ever heard him speak?
No,
He's just so inspirational.
okay.
And, you know, he's a professor at Delaware, and of course he had, you know, Bringing Nature Home, his books. He just connects so well with the audience, very down to earth,
Okay.
and he just puts heart into the science.
so let's just remember to get the books here too.
Right, doesn't he have a new book coming out? Wait,
Yes,
who
I don't
has a
think
new
it's
book
out yet.
coming? There are a lot of people who are timing it right around April for Earth Day.
Yeah,
So I think Dan Jaffe finished a book. I think
That sounds
Doug
right, too.
Tellme has one coming out
Yeah.
for next year, and I was somewhere and someone was talking about another book, and it's just not gonna come to me right now. But yes, but so we can also have a co-sponsored by the Friends, because we can sell the books,
Friends of the library,
Friends of the Library.
yeah.
And then like scattered books, to get the books.
Exactly.
Right.
And then they have it
It'd be
set
a
up.
really nice community, initiative,
If you
a lot
can
of
get some
collaborative.
funding from the so this is what we need funding for, and also but we have to start now, cause it's already
Right.
August, but, not August, July, just like it's August. But if we can get the Sawmill River and maybe the Garden Club
Yeah.
to kick in, you might have enough funding, depending what
You could
budget we might get, but we won't know what our budget would be till,
Yeah, I saw that.
And no program
January.
January?
scheduled,
Oh, so you
Where-
have
I
a
think
date,
you'll-
but no program.
and no program,
So if it
Do we
matches
know
if
for
it
that?
works, like he's available
Have
that
some
date,
kind of
what is the
idea
date
what's
again?
gonna-
April 15th.
what they'll say
So
yes
it's tax
to.
day.
Oh, that's a,
That's what she
it
was
could be
kind
a
of
good
indicating.
post-tax.
What's that, what's that?
It's
Sabrina,
just
about the
the way it
budget,
felt on
one of the reasons she kind of wanted it on the, when she wanted it was maybe to see really what is the possibility or how,
I'm sure that would just human nature, that would strike anyone, right, just to see that number, right?
Right.
And then, if we could do it so that, I mean, it kind of would be the best approach to, I have to get numbers, and then you were gonna give me numbers, so if we could your line item, and then you get a total, then it kind of gives perspective of, well,
Oh.
gee, 75% is for this, and, some of these others, and,
Oh, no, I'm sorry,
if that works or not.
well, actually, what I was meant was, when would we actually, I was thinking we might know before the end of the year, or is it really gonna be, we'll know when the final budget comes out and is
Oh,
published?
that's a really good question,
Well,
like,
we'll
when
see
will it be
next week.
approved?
Right, I could ask that, I
Yeah.
don't have an answer to, yeah. we could put that in.
Because for this year's community days, we'll be doing it just with other funds then, because this is for next year's budget. It's for January 2020.
Okay,
So
need to be
for
approved.
October,
Okay.
we'll just go into.
Right, but I thought the Doug Talling was around the Earth Day, was that around
Oh, yeah,
Community
no,
Day?
I'm
I'm
thinking,
sorry.
oh, no,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
thinking of community day for this year, we'll
Yeah.
just use other for educational materials, it'll
We'll
come
just
from
have
another
to
place.
right, so like you were saying, a banner, Lucille, like,
Yeah.
we wanna have things.
I have a
printed in
project plan for community day. It's not very complete,
Okay.
but do we want, but I don't wanna hijack the agenda,
No,
go hijack away.
yes,
Okay, so community day is September 14th,
Right.
and I did confirm the times 10 to 3.
Okay.
So the table, the Rotary Club, the town's Rotary Club is responsible for it, but town boards can get tables, but like a table means like a spot without having to pay like the fee, whichever, whatever it is, $75, so I don't know when that is,
Right.
to sort of like
Submit.
submit it, but I'll be happy to take that as a follow-up, and I'll ask, like, Eileen said there's the new person that's doing it.
Right, so I actually think it's Barbara Klein's husband, who did it last year. And I sent her a quick email
Ah.
asking if we could have 4 of us together,
Right.
because we're the same people, we can just rotate
Mhm.
through, so that we
Coverage,
could have
yeah.
Healthy Yards, Pollinator Pathway, Conservation Board, and Garden Club.
Mhm.
Just in a
Yeah,
row type
right in a
of
row,
thing.
yeah,
For that. The notices usually go out at the end of this month.
okay,
Their applications, now what's interesting is conservation boards probably, we have no P O box, so we would have to contact them with that,
Mm-hmm.
but when we get the list for that, the notification, I will tell you
Oh,
and now
okay.
they're
Oh,
accepting
great.
them. It's
Okay.
not like they turn you away,
No.
but nonetheless, they do have a deadline for it,
Yeah.
because then they start assigning spots.
right, okay, so that's great, so if
Yeah.
Barbara Klein's doing it, then that's, her
her
husband's
husband.
is doing the lineup, you have an inside thing, so one of the things we need to do is decide on what we're going to have at the table.
is this an extra copy?
No, it's actually different, but I
sorry.
can,
Okay.
it's really a high level, so I think that, we definitely need to make a banner. So a banner saying something like the Conservation Committee or Board or whatever we're called, because we need it not only to put around the table or on the front of the table. Personally, I want it for Memorial Day parade,
Oh,
because
you want
when
it
we,
on?
next year, I want us to be walking down that street with our banner,
Oh,
you know.
that would be great.
It would be great, right?
Is that a new graphic?
I made it
So
on,
great,
no,
It's good,
Google.
yeah.
There's like,
Maybe you
make
could
it,
share it and see, like, should we vote on it, or, I mean, I personally really like it.
I'm not an
I liked
artist, I just did something with a tree and a hand or whatever it was.
Has a heart in it or.
It has a heart.
Beautiful.
So anyway, and you could make it say anything you want.
A
you know?
Valentine's heart or a human heart, just curious.
Ah,
It's a scientific replica.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, beating, you know. So anyway, so we need a banner, we need handouts, what kind
What
of
are gonna be
handouts?
your handouts?
And we don't wanna make like tons of paper,
Right.
but you know, we should definitely have something to give people though, because, and even if it's like a little postcard kind of thing that
I like
that
that
has
idea.
like something on it, so we should really be thinking about that, and we have like a month, basically, not even. And a guy that I work with on the other board that I'm on uses something that's called like nextdayflyers.com, and he's like, he's part of the chat pack thing,
okay.
and they have to make lots of things cheaply. So he has tons of he makes postcards a lot, and he's used them for banners, and they're inexpensive.
Okay.
So, once if we come up with
Maybe it's something
verbiage,
they could put on their fridge, you know, some resource, something, like what are
something,
you imagining?
well, I don't even know, like, I mean, when you, people need to see like either the website names or like a little like info graphic,
Something
you know,
yeah.
something, so we do need to, like, and again, I don't think any of us are designers or graphic artists, but
I'm just gonna hydrate, I gotta get water too.
sure.
Yeah.
You know, so those are the kinds of things, like, what, if we're gonna have a table, we want people to come up to it,
So
what are they gonna do?
we have already the Coyote Awareness Program that came out of Conservation Board, right?
The Coyote Awareness Program,
Yeah.
say more.
Well,
In
is
other
it-
words, we have the sheet about pupping season
Yeah,
that was created,
right?
But was that part of the conservation board, I think is what
Is
she
that
was asking.
might have been separate from.
Yeah.
No, it's
We've got the
Victoria
landscape
board.
The
buffer
conservation
brochure.
board never really produced anything.
I like the landscape buffer
It's
brochure.
like,
I
it
compliment
doesn't
on
like
it.
drag you in, you know,
No,
it's
no,
like.
I would say it should be better.
I posted on Facebook a lot, and people always like it.
I have to tell you, it's making its rounds. Someone at Stanford asked for it, we were talking about it, and then all of a sudden I met someone from Gilbert who starts talking about landscape buffers, and I said, did you see a single sheet? She said, I did, it came from Bartlett. I was like, actually,
Good.
it came from Newcastle.
Oh, you know what,
That's so
note to self, put a little footer created by,
That's true.
Well,
Brand.
but you know, it made its way through Pollinator Pathway, which is one of the things I love about it, because it's open, and that's just
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
we put it out there for it, and but so we have that,
I
Right.
didn't realize it was so famous.
but people like it because they like to have the plant list, you
They
know.
do, and it's a good formula. It was just the right amount of information,
Yeah.
and actually that was simply because we had
To
the
do it.
one-page front back
Yeah.
limit. But that's the recipe for it, because as much as this is great, again, attention span, we're going with 20 seconds, and so they want to see this, get it, they, and then I'd like to think they read each one of the paragraphs, but then they flip it over and they go right to the plans with the different height levels. So I think that it did turn out.
Yeah.
It did
Yeah,
turn
I
out
But I mean,
fine.
if we need like 1,000 of those, I don't know what the number is, like, we have to, that's how we
To
make,
hand them
how do
out
we make them
that
1,000,
Right.
right?
Community day,
Well, that's true, like what would the
In terms of-
handouts be?
thousands don't come through, so in
Okay.
general, what we have done is we have a sign up, we have a couple of brochures, we have bookmarks, brochures are kind of pricey. We probably go through about 50 pieces of paper.
Okay,
But
so that's good to know.
that's different, cause that's the, you know what I mean? So I don't know for a town, I know Beautification Advisory Board, but it's not in the.
Not
Well, also
1,000,
to,
okay.
like I'm thinking, again, you got me thinking with the coyote thing, if we do wanna have something about, the one, I think there's a one pager out there that's
Yeah.
smart, or even about bear.
And bear,
You know, bears, and that's becoming a bigger issue in our town, we brought a speaker in, last season, who was fantastic. Maybe I think that's maybe we need more copies of, because that's gonna fly
And
like hot
seasonally,
potato
while I
buns.
was at Community Day last year,
Yeah.
there was a bear in our backyard,
Right.
literally, that day.
Mm.
While I was there, not paying attention to
Very
my
timely.
son,
Yeah.
texting me every millisecond
Yeah,
with
we
it.
actually, at the Healthy Arts table, we had stuff about bear and people were interested, so
Yeah.
it's almost like maybe we need to figure out how many handouts we need for the different,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean,
And
so
they should be
that's,
pulling their nectar and pulling their birdseed, that's
Yeah.
what
Here.
people should be doing.
but
They're actively.
for the table though, I mean, people like to walk by and take something
Yes.
or
Right.
do something or, you
I
know,
like the idea of like a magnet type thing or something that kind of sticks around more than a piece of paper that gets thrown in the
Right, but how are you gonna pay
recycling.
for it?
I don't
Yeah,
know, put it in the
right.
budget.
A very inexpensive company
Well-
maybe makes magnets too.
I mean, I don't know, I'm just
Yeah, no,
throwing it out there.
I think a magnet is
I mean,
Good
I
idea.
could
but
be
a
some
magnet is, the problem with the magnet, a magnet would be good for pollinator pathways, cause you could like put it on
That's
something.
actually true,
Right, but for
yeah.
conservation board, what are you gonna have a magnet of? Like
Right.
our phone number, like, what
Right,
is it, right?
no, you're
Right,
right,
like,
no, you're right.
You know, call,
Hotline,
right, but it might be like,
But if we had a good line, something about conservation, I mean,
That's true, we need a
you see what you're
tagline.
saying is really, coming around and around with that, it's about, because people aren't asked to conserve.
so
conservation
brainstorm
is
for
your
the
key
next like
component.
week.
So let's
and-
brainstorm
Cause we really
and-
need to have something to, cause
Tagline.
we're not gonna have anything on the table, I mean, you know, Missy can bring her like stack of like books again to look at, I mean, which is fine, you know, and we have the buffer thing, you know, which is fine, I mean, I'm not
Great.
no, I don't mean that, but like, that's all we're gonna have, I mean, there's not even anything for people to sign up for conservation board, like the pollinator pathways, at least they sign
So we
up
have
for.
to think about
What are
this.
we gonna
Have a
sign them up for, like,
Conversation.
Yeah, let's maybe do
We'll
that.
do a coffee
Yeah.
conversation.
Okay.
Or something.
So we do need that.
Yeah,
Oh, and
let's-
one thing I was thinking though is for us, different than, I mean, I wrote map of town properties with projects. So, like for example, I saw you had a picture of Glacier, for example, like we could, you know, one of the
We could
things,
highlight that.
we could do Glacier, we could do,
We could do pins for that, like which sanctuaries have you been to or something?
well, that's the other thing, I was thinking of the sanctuaries, like,
Yeah.
you know, because one of the things we used to have in that book, right, the town of Newcastle book is,
Yeah.
here are our parks, so we have Prune, whatever we have,
Prime.
Prime, we have Glacier, we've got the other one that you got
Whippoorwill.
lost in, Whippoorwill, we got Gledney,
The park I got lost in, there's a tagline
The whole
for you.
town knows we're all lost.
We're together. And Victoria
But that could be in
joined
a
us.
spiritual sense, it doesn't have to
Yeah,
be in a physical
right.
sense.
There you go.
we have Gedney, we have Scheckler,
No, but you know what?
do we even have, like, do we never, I don't know,
We
if
should,
people.
but I agree, we should have a separate, like maybe like a coffee brainstorm thing or
Okay.
something,
Yeah.
because
Come up with some stuff.
come up with some ideas, but the idea, I like where your thinking is going in terms of our parks that are already there, because they wouldn't be there if they had, not that.
They hadn't been
But
conserved.
if it hadn't been conserved, so
Right.
that's a
Right.
nice angle
Yeah.
to take it, and then it also might be a nice way to highlight
So
Glacier,
And
if we
also-
do wanna start to get like a,
Yeah.
if eventually we really do wanna have volunteers
Yeah.
at Glacier doing stuff, like
Yeah.
that might,
Right.
you know, instead of having a broad, I mean, maybe have, well, sorry, I'm not expressing this well, but having specific things that we're going to,
Yeah, do,
yeah, as
Do it.
opposed to just,
right, and the other thing you've seen before, so keep it, is I've seen in other venues, like a list of the parks, and then like across the top, like their amenities, you know,
Yes,
so
yes.
so hiking,
Right.
native, you know, wild hike, you know, things, bird sanctuary, you know,
The facilities there.
you know,
Yeah,
and, you know, on the
facilities.
pollinator pathway,
right?
you know,
Yeah, we can make up our own.
we can make up our own, the ones that we
Trails.
care about, but have like a little
Right.
grid. And then we could even, you know, like have all the different, like a little map, and then have like a dot,
What's
like A,
exciting
B,
about
C,
going
D.
there, yeah.
You know,
It's great.
appropriate, you know, an easy walk, you know,
You know-
dogs, you know, like those are all things that we could put
Dog-friendly.
on.
What we also don't do is this whole nature deficit, last child in the woods. You know, when we're talking about highlighting what we have with that, there's, thinking of the four of us in a row, conservation board can be picking up on some of that as well. And that's out there, we just have to, you know, put it together with that in terms of screen-free time, trying to get the families who
Oh,
go
right.
through.
It's so healthy to be outside and fun
Right.
to be outside
Do
and.
you
Right.
think it would be worthwhile, like if you're looking to generate, because this doesn't seem like the one item wouldn't be a big addition, if you're looking to generate something at a GIS level for a pollinator pathway, like the simple add-on would be the parks. I'm not sure then you
Yeah.
can go with the time allotted, then start now microing the amenities
No.
and whatnot, but at least in a broad sense to
Yeah.
include those
Yeah, yeah.
linkages, alright,
Right.
I'll
What
write
what
that
we
down.
could do
Yeah, that
just
would
on
be
a piece of paper is like do the parks,
Newcastle, Newcastle Parks.
Newcastle Parks, right?
And
Or- Parks and what else would we call them, parks and preserves.
preserves, and
Parks
but
and
you could
preserves, right.
even say, you know, like the Burden property, which came in,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
like that's what I'm just looking
Yes.
at, you know, influence
Oh, right.
results kind of thing,
Yeah.
like this is what our conservation, not that we've done it in the last 20 years, but this is what our conservation
Right.
board does.
Well, then that's the point though, that I was thinking
How
about
can we get,
what if we looked at, I don't know how I'm sure we could find it out fairly easily, when all of these were established. If you had a
Exactly.
timeline, when everything was created and now there's like nothing. I mean, in other words,
Dormant for a while.
people have been, you're enjoying these because people thought about the future.
right,
And that's, and I think there's such an emphasis
Yeah.
on that right now, especially with everything that's going on in the climate.
Right.
And I
Yes.
think people, as you're saying, they're more attuned to, people are thinking more about their environment, and so
Rachel
maybe,
Carson's of
Mhm,
Newcastle,
mhm.
right?
yeah, right,
Yeah.
silence.
Yeah,
no, that's a
But I
very
mean,
good point.
I don't know when these were all created, I have no idea.
Nothing has happened, I think, in the last 20 years.
Right, and we should have a chart and say, big question mark,
Right,
Yeah.
what
And
are you
that would be
creating
so
for your
powerful.
children?
right,
For the future.
Right.
These people thought of you, they're not here anymore, most of them,
right.
but you're enjoying what they established.
And Laura Damaris is an interesting example,
Oh,
because
that's
she
really-
just took one plot of land, bought it, that was gonna be developed, and it's now gonna be it's a nonprofit.
Right.
Missy and I went for a walk with her to check it out, and it's now gonna be, open to the public at some point. And she literally preserved how many acres? 10 acres? I can't
12,
remember.
I think.
12? I mean, it's amazing.
What
And
was
so
that
she,
site? I just,
Laura Damaris lives in town,
okay.
and there was a whole area, the Brandywine development, that was,
Oh, right.
they were contemplating it for years, and they finally approved it.
Good.
And a huge, really woodsy, full of wild, area, and she lives nearby. And, she and her family enjoyed that whole area when it was, wild, and they wanted to preserve part of it. So they actually purchased one of the lots and are turning it into a preserve now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's not gonna be
It's a
an apiary?
nonprofit. Say it
It
again?
is also,
Oh, is it an apiary?
Yeah.
It's
So
an yeah, there
is she
is.
gonna have a booth at Community Day, or does she want us to
Mm.
include her?
I don't
want
think
her-
we're ready
I
for
don't want
that,
her
I don't
to
think they're
speak
ready
for
for
her.
that.
I think they're still in
They were
finalization.
supposed to have an open day in April.
Yeah,
They're
they're
still
not ready,
finalizing,
they're still,
yeah.
there's still a bunch of things that they,
But that she,
administrative tasks
and I
that
think we
have-
would have to ask her permission whether she's comfortable putting that out there in that way, but
I don't think
it's
she
a-
is yet.
Right,
okay.
but at some point, that is the one, one example I can think of someone intentionally wanting to preserve. And I
Right,
think
to
Westchester,
highlight
there are one or two
profiles.
Westchester Land Trust pieces of land also, right, here in Newcastle.
Oh, yeah.
And so there are some people who are thinking in these terms. The question is, can we, respecting their privacy, et cetera, highlight some of these? I don't know, but it would behoove us to think about that, because then it gets people thinking, wow, maybe that's something I might wanna do. To your point, around consciousness, and I love the idea of the big question mark. Here's the past, but where are we now and where's the future?
Where are we going?
I like that, I do too.
so next step is to sit down and like brainstorm, cause we have to have
But
something
can I just
tangible.
say one quick thing, just
Yeah,
one,
yeah, yeah, yes.
again, this is
What-
just
the
off the
same
top of my
thing.
head, I think we've
Yeah.
talked about this a little bit. Could we ever, as a board, have an intern? Like the SAB has a high school student or two who come to their meetings, and is there, intern, I don't know if
That
that's
would be
the formal
great.
role is, or the youth member?
And would they need a release? No.
We need a ton of
It's
releases.
expensive,
So that might
Okay.
engage younger folks,
Mhm.
in what we're doing somehow, and
Yeah.
have their voice too in our process, so.
Well, there is the Greeley Volunteer Fair.
Oh, and they could sign,
Yeah.
and they could sign, if people were interested, I kept thinking of your sign up question. If people walk by, and this is something they could sign up for if they're interested in being considered as an intern, although you never wanna reject anyone, if we got 15 applicants, I don't know,
Right.
that would be a lovely thing.
So Greeley has in March, they have their youth volunteer fair. There's one at the Congregational Church in
Right,
October
I think it's in
Yeah.
October, yeah.
to do that. So I would not suggest that we do independent tables, that especially I did the FCC last August, and the participation was greater at Greeley because you get out of class, so we had more
Right, so
kids come
everyone's
through.
coming, yeah.
At FCC, it was much more parents encouraging the children to sign up for things that children did not want to sign up for.
Understood, yeah.
But for the intern, we could let the counseling department know, that's suggested as one of the volunteer, cause that's a different commitment for that. So they often have an idea of a student who might want to do that.
And that's where students think of going with their interests and finding opportunities to,
Yeah.
so.
And then everybody should clear their schedule for September 14th, cause we're
Yeah.
gonna need like coverage.
We're all gonna be in a row, well, at least if
We're all gonna be in a
if
row,
Joe
we can
can
just-
swing it,
oh.
we're all gonna be in a row, so
I know,
we
but for
just-
the Healthy Yards Day or the Pollinator Day, I was like, which hat am I wearing?
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
This is the, really,
I know.
conservation, pollinator.
It was a funny day, yeah, okay.
So
Okay,
I have another thing, well,
yeah, go.
I did this, I started to do the same thing for Earth Day, but Earth Day is not just Earth Day, it's Earth Year, right? So that one, we need to also have a meeting and talk about what we're gonna do for that, because that's gotta be more like whole.
We have more time to plan, but
Yeah.
that should be planned.
The other, do you mind me?
No,
Talking.
sorry, I was just scratching my chin.
Okay, no,
have to
I
shave
have,
it. I'm
no,
sorry.
no, I have a couple of things, I was brainstorming with myself. And so I was thinking, one of the things we talked about before is to do like I called it like the communication plan. To do like some communication stuff, so one of the things we were talking about is doing like a new, like, put a blurb in the newsletter every month.
The town.
Town newsletter. And so like I started making like a little chart. So like we probably need to do one like even if it's like every month.
Every month we're gonna do, I mean, it keeps increasing, but that's great, I mean, there's a
Well, every
plenty to
month,
say every
because
month.
well, I figured like in the
Something's
winter,
happening
there's
every
not that much to say, but like right now, there's lots of stuff. So I was thinking there's a month.
Oh, why don't we each take a month?
Brilliant.
I knew where you were going with
I
that.
think there is something to say in winter, because, you know, when
I
I see
agree,
crocuses coming up through the snow, I'm like, wow, that's
Okay.
amazing, I never
Well, I
expected
just didn't
to see
know.
that before,
I
you
just
know,
did, whatever we can do.
That's just one example,
But
but like,
who
yeah,
wants
so-
August?
I'll
I
take
think
August.
July.
I'll start. I'll
Let's see,
take
and you have to
August.
think of a topic,
I will.
not right now. September,
So
well, I
but
wanna
wait,
do the one.
I need to know details, so what's the deadline to get it into?
I don't know,
and how
it's
do you
once a
ship it?
month and he
Get it
does it
in.
weekly,
They do it twice a week, the newsletter, you send it to Jill Shapiro,
Okay,
and I
Thank you.
don't know what the graphics situation is, I mean, we sent graphics for Pollinator, you know, the week, and none of the graphics got in, so I don't know. But if you get it in by like Tuesday, or better yet, Monday, they'll do it for Wednesday and Friday. So if you know ahead of time, they will do it, but
so the newsletter is twice a week.
twice, usually.
Sometimes it doesn't come out on
Sometimes it's
Wednesday.
right.
It pretty much always comes out on Friday,
So,
and sometimes.
But basically, if I just email Jill Shapiro and say, I would like to get this in the
Yeah.
newsletter, she'll just say,
Yes.
yes, you need
Yes.
to do it by X date,
Yes.
blah, blah,
Yes.
blah,
And
and
then
I'll say it's, you know, four sentences long, or whatever, you know, not a long thing, but
And
it's
usually that you can, if you have a link to something, you know, then it can go
Well,
to a
that's-
bigger article.
Do we wanna link to, well, that's a possibility, but do
Well-
we wanna link it to the website?
well, the first one, you can, if you wanna do the first one could be like, we're going to be doing this every month. Here's our website, like, it could be an intro, or maybe like part of it could be
Conservation
about, by the way, introducing the
logo,
conservation, with a,
with our
logo.
our logo, so that
And our
we're
tagline
identifying
when we
it.
have one.
So in general.
Nuke the Frog.
Right.
What do we
Nuke
do?
the Frog.
Brad.
As a flyer, so
Okay.
as a
I'll-
PDF with
That'll
that, then
tie
there's
into
a
final
single
agenda-
line,
agenda
and
item,
then
you'll see.
when they scroll down, there's a separate flyer, and the nice thing about that is that you can, someone who's interested
Right.
in that can just send it to
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
by having that flyer, it's a one click to just send to
Okay.
whomever would be interested.
I mean, we could even put the
And-
buffer thing in there again and say like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know,
We can
this
just
came
start
out
with something
already,
that
you've
we've
seen
got.
this, but now here's,
Yep,
you know,
okay, so, and then
Or
is
what-
this,
And then if you want something on the board, the lighted board, it has to be 10 words or less.
okay,
That's good to know.
10 words or less
Yeah.
for,
So good, okay,
Well,
10
yeah.
words.
She did it for Pollinator Week.
Yeah.
or less for the electronic board.
Right.
And I guess if we think about timing, we would wanna do it early enough in September to say that we'll be at the community.
So
Yeah.
somebody should be thinking, so should we assign them right
Yeah.
now? Okay,
Who wants September?
I've got August,
I'll take September,
okay.
I can do October,
okay?
Because we can do the leave the leaves.
unless you wanna do it, honestly, I have so much going on, I'm happy to.
Doesn't have to be, it has three, like one paragraph on something,
Or Mel, take October then.
Okay, I'll do
Yeah,
it.
take up.
alright, and that's 3 months out, we can come back and do this again next month. But if anybody has anything in
So
particular,
that's
right?
3 months, so
3
let's go
months.
3 months out.
3 months out,
And
and we'll
I-
say,
and
that's
we all need to-
October, November's Thanksgiving, no one's, cares.
And do we all trust each other, do we need to run it by everybody, or can we just do something and put it out there? Everyone's okay
Yeah.
with that?
I mean, I trust everyone, that's.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
well, no,
but-
so sometimes that becomes
And also, you don't wanna be like overlap,
kinda
but-
nice, crazy.
Yeah, okay, I just wanna make sure
No,
that
no, I
we're
think
all on the
it's- I
same
mean,
page.
yeah.
So the only thing that I'm thinking about too is that it's just a blurb, it's not really a separate sheet of paper on that.
It could be anything, but it could be like, it could be, one of the things I would think of doing is invasive species of the month. Like, not, but like, right now, you'll see,
Yeah,
in
what's
the, in February, when you start seeing the barberries, like, they're the only
Yeah,
thing that are
right.
green, if you see this,
You know.
and then you have that,
right.
like, for example, or
And
could
wear
be like,
gloves.
What?
Invasive
And wear
species
gloves.
due
and
to
wear
you.
gloves, or like, if you see right now, like, you see the milkweed, or something, somebody could write something about that, like, I think it could be,
August, yeah.
So
And it-
just, I mean, a couple of lines, I mean, I don't,
well, whatever you
Well,
feel.
if you think about the new, I don't mean to interrupt you.
does it have,
I'm just thinking, if you go to the e-newsletter, it gives you
Yeah.
a sense. You have a header, you have a visual hopefully,
Yeah.
and then you have
A few
a bigger
sentences.
blurb,
Yeah.
and then you can link to something if you choose to.
Well,
You know.
do you think we should do July? Oh, so I
Well-
sent it to Missy and Lucille, so there is a monarch count
Mm.
through an organization, and it's actually, they go through, you count the eggs, you count the caterpillars according to the Instar, and then you just give all that information to send it. They do West Coast monarchs, it's actually through North America, they include Mexico. So they give a lot of information. It's not just a simple, oh, look at the butterfly, they use the number of plants as a denominator. We could try to do
Citizen
that.
science.
So why don't we do that for
Citizen
July?
science.
Do you wanna
It
write that one
is-
up?
it's
Just like a
July.
blur and with a link.
Yeah, it's 27th through August 4th, so
So
I
if
would
we
have
get
to
it
get
in
that out
tomorrow,
right away.
yeah.
Right,
You already
right.
wrote it, and it's just a link.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, alright, I'll do July.
And I'll put July, yeah,
Yeah,
so,
And just
no.
say,
Okay, I'll send that.
from the conservation
Yeah.
board, that's all.
Yeah, that could be our,
Yeah, or conservation
And is it
corner.
through Monarch Watch, or is there some other?
It's not through Monarch
No,
Watch,
it's
it's a
something
different
else.
organization.
Isn't it?
It's not through
No.
Xerces either.
I never figured out how to use Monarch Watch, so that's what I was asking, so I
All
don't
right.
have to worry about that.
and so I have a couple other real quick things.
Yes,
So-
Lucille?
So
Go
the, quick,
I'm ready.
the inside
To go
Chappaqua
home.
thing, so I sent that around,
Yes.
Oh,
Just
Yeah,
Discover
could you,
Chemicals?
just my phone number, don't ask me why, it's 7278, but it's funny, when I receive calls, sometimes that old, whatever, leading with the number 4,
Oh,
those digits still
7278.
sometimes appear,
So
but
which
for
number do you-
people to dial me,
7278.
it's 7278, that's.
So I'll see if I'll get that into them, because,
That would be
well,
great.
but let me just tell
Can
you,
we just
so
go back
what,
for 1 second? Yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead, no,
So is this about, are we asking to get in there as the conservation board?
Yes,
yes,
Okay, cause my other thought with that whole, what is it called,
Discover Chappaqua.
is almost like, and maybe this is where the conservation board comes in, I almost have always wished that our marketing materials as a town would talk about how bucolic a town we are. In other words, it winds up a lot being the stores, which is very important, the wonderful, parks and rec kind of stuff happening.
But the fact I saw my first barred owl the other day on
Exactly.
Hardscrabble Road when I was doing a tree application, I told my wife, you've been hearing these things for 25 years, and I finally figured
Wow.
I saw one, and it was
right,
like right
but
there.
but Victoria, they showed the example of the
I
one
just-
So I was excited.
from the other town.
Yeah.
Right, so all I know is that, and then I recently saw that Grace is doing the Inside Chappaqua she's doing the editing and stuff like that.
For
So-
Discover Chappaqua, right?
Discover Chappaqua.
Discover
Right.
Chappaqua.
I keep calling it Inside Chappaqua,
She
cause she
does
is inside,
Right.
but I think it's for
It's
Discover.
a physical book, a physical,
No, it's a website.
No, it's gonna be a website.
Okay, like a
It's a
dynamic,
website, so all it does,
dynamic
it lists
website.
like, so if you're a town entity, you
Resources
could just put your town entity and what you do,
Okay, so
and
it's not a
that's it.
physical hard copy of a brochure or anything.
And if you
Okay.
wanna, like if you're a business and you wanna advertise, that's like you can do that, but and pay for it.
Right, so she was
I got it.
asking for different things, so the pages I've seen so far, so like on my other board, you know, like it was like, you know, they're only putting in this much,
Yeah.
you know, per thing. And then I saw today, she sent, I don't know why she sent it to me, but like I saw all the first responder organizations, so there was like the police and then the fire and then the
Right,
thing,
right,
and I'm
right,
like,
right.
well, I don't need to be on this one. But anyway, but for ours, she kept thinking we were the sustainability board. So I'm like, no, and she kept sending me like, this is what I have, and I said,
That's not us.
That's not us.
no, and then I realized like she didn't,
Understood.
right,
A lot
so,
of people I think don't understand.
Right, that's why
so
we're
then I
gonna
sent her
change.
this whole thing. But everybody else's is this big, so I assume she's going to,
Just take it and mesh it.
yeah,
and-
so I'm not even sure how much she's gonna put in there, so
Okay. But as
I'll,
long as we have our.
we have something.
That's great.
So
That
I'll double
works.
check that, right? And then, we talked about that. I did need people's opinions about this problem on Brandon Drive. So did I post? Yeah, I did.
Oh, the
So
track
somebody,
line.
okay, so somebody on Chappaqua Moms was
Oh,
having a
right.
heart attack about their messy island or whatever median, traffic median. And
Overgrown area.
it's an
right?
overgrown area, and of course I was alerted to the barberry there. But after many years of trying to go through proper channels, public shaming is the last resort. Here are pics of the island at Brandon Drive. I spent almost an hour around Memorial Day weeding. Here it is today, before and after an hour of work. Over the past 4 years, I have left phone messages, town hall, DPW, I've left written messages to contact me with multiple calls, not a word. Now I'd like to, the exercise, but she just wants to know like what to do. So I
She
said,
must be well-intentioned, she's just frustrated that, what
right,
happened.
and also, it also is not good, cause it's all Barberry.
Right,
in my
I remember seeing it.
So I said, I'm having a meeting today with everybody, and I will ask what the rules are. Cause I don't know what the rules, like,
It's a
what
great
response,
What is
who's,
the channel? who's responsible for the islands? Melanie?
and this is Brandon Drive, like, it's not even the main traffic area, you know what this is, right?
So Brandon Drive is,
I didn't-
so
I
it
copy and
depends on
pasted
what road
everybody's
they're
email.
on.
Like off
Oh, you know,
133.
maybe you sent it, and I
Oh,
used
you're
that,
on
and
Roaring
I'm
Brook?
sorry, I'll
Go
forward
down
it to
on
you.
Roaring Brook and then
It's
you-
off of Old Roaring Brook, so the way, we had I don't even know how the garden club ended up with the traffic triangles, but we somehow had them and then we planted, and then the town continues with the maintenance of them. The exception, well, and this actually predates, so there was Julie Greco who used to work she was a member of the garden club, she designed, worked on the pocket park, very talented, she did the recycling center as well. Beautiful work, she did the traffic triangle. She had her own crew because she was a landscape designer. So some of those were supplemented with having her crew do them. No longer able to do that, so the traffic triangle at 120, 117 has reverted back to town. The one by the traffic light, 120 and Mill River, that one was part of the project when they, that was actually planted, when we planted it, they gave us tulips and leucothyll.
I saw that.
Yeah, they did.
I remember
That was from, I don't know, the county, I'm not quite sure. So it depends, that triangle was from their developer who built
That's what I was
those
thinking.
houses. That is a newer development. That's not like Kip and Douglas, Hardscrabble and Douglas, or any of these other sites. So that is totally not on our radar. I don't think it's on the town
Project.
radar,
No.
because it was there and it was probably
What state
planted
did they
with.
go to buy Japanese barberry?
Well, you know what,
Looks fully
Brandon was probably
established.
about
Not-
10 years,
not in New York.
10-year-old development. And then on the way out, they have a little sign, right, in front of the area? So, the barberry was planted by the
Developer.
developer, and then after the developer's gone, there's no plan for that. I will say that if you have like Petersville Road, for example, or if you have Lawrence Farms East, Lawrence Farms South, a group of homeowners plant their big
interesting.
stone planters. I know in front of Petersville Road, they do 2 landscaped areas, and those are homeowners who do that.
Interesting.
In front of Cowden, they used to do that. That was
I
just,
don't do that anymore in front of Cowden.
no,
It's just
because
homeowners.
whoever did it probably moved.
Yeah.
But so it's a group saying this, I hear it a lot, people say, well, why isn't the town doing X? But that was never town, I would dare say those Barberry were there from the developer when those.
But
So-
who owns that
Maybe she
triangle
could get together with her
now?
neighbors.
It's, that is,
Right, that's
so,
what-
Is there,
That's-
is anybody responsible for it?
well, so.
She's getting aggravated and calling the DPW and getting mad at them. Then someone said, oh, I found out that it's the rec department, and I'm sure they're,
Oh, poor Ike.
right, right.
No,
So-
yeah, I mean, I would,
So,
like, I
so
don't
the
know,
question
maybe
is, what's the,
it's-
who's the,
who-
what's,
who's responsible
who's
for it?
responsible?
So it depends on who plows the road, right? Because if it's a private road, then if the town plows the road, then the developer might have planted it, but then I don't know the way out. Some of these are private roads in which the town doesn't plow. But
Oh,
if the
that's
town
true.
plows, then I almost think it's town, right?
I would guess.
I don't
know.
know.
And it's just an
Not
aesthetic
necessarily.
issue, right? This isn't like an immediate risk, right, or anything
Right.
to that effect, okay.
You have to look at the plot, you have to go back and look at the plan and see what that little triangle, who owns
It's
it.
on private land.
Is there an easy way to do that? Not me.
To find out who's, I can ask Chris, who might know, just like from a fire standpoint, cause they, which are roads are private, which are, cause they do kinda know.
In a condo association, for example, town will not plow because,
Right.
so Apple Hill or whatever those areas are plowed by a private
Right,
contract. And
yeah.
if they're plowed by a private contract, then I would think that the town has absolutely nothing with that, it's all private. So that's planted by the developer
Yeah,
and
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna bet that it's public.
I think so too.
Well, they have to dedicate it at some point, but they have to see what they dedicated. I mean, at the end of the day, when the developer got everyone signed off and everything, he had to have a plan of how this was gonna
This was a
go from
triangle.
private to public, unless it was retained. So perhaps that little triangle is addressed.
How do you find that out?
You would
Karen.
go and look, you'd go to the building department and pull up the plans, see what, basically,
Can I
that's
tell
what she
them
could
to
do.
do that?
Yeah,
And hope that triangle shows up on
Yeah.
whoever,
Yeah.
cause presumably it's not
Because-
what you just described, it's not a condo board or there's
No.
not an issue.
I mean, I live in
Probably, yeah.
Lawrence Farms East, and so we pay for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Um,
And
But
it's
but there's an
usually,
association with bylaw, it's different.
Right, yeah.
Right,
So I don't know.
I'll often get a couple people at T-Town, I guess, who live in such a situation as you described, they're like, we're an advisory board and, they don't hear us and, but I want, I told them about you and could you give us some things that you would recommend to plant that, won't clog the pool filter and won't destroy the curbstone from their roots and whatever, and I'm like, oh. And I was like, yeah, you gotta come up with this boutique-y type thing, but that's the reason, it's like, we're kind of all our own entity here and have to do that, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I will follow up on that.
Okay.
And then,
You have more?
well, one more. The the sidewalk plan.
Yeah, this one we should have brought up earlier.
yeah.
Cause we're getting tired, yeah. So, all this construction,
Yes,
there's a sidewalk plan
I'm
for
sure there
trees.
is, yep,
So, it was done last year,
yes,
2018.
yes,
So first of all, I guess that's good, right?
Mhm.
There's two concerns. One concern was that somebody had heard a rumor that when there's not enough room for the trees
In all those
To
areas
be,
to
because
replace
it
them.
won't be
yeah.
ADA compliant.
it won't be ADA compliant.
Do you know anything?
And so my
about
other
that?
board had the ADA guy, the town building guy, talk, and I didn't know that at the time, otherwise I would have asked, but so we want ADA
right,
compliance, but we also want trees, and it
Sure.
sounds like somebody didn't talk, maybe, but I don't even know if that's true.
Can
So,
you find out?
So one of the concerns, so we read this and there are certain areas that are highlighted where the trees were removed and we're not sure if they're going to be replacement trees that can go back in
mhm,
those areas. Or if there's gonna be enough space, if there was enough space for the tree, if there's enough space for a larger container that can house a small tree, just to, not to use the word bucolic, but just to, so when the trees are removed, the larger trees,
So like
And-
when you're talking rooftop type stuff, when you see people do, you know, like in nice apartments and they have a pool up there and you see these giant trees like in
Oh,
containers.
not even giant,
Oh,
I
okay.
mean,
I see
just
some
something
on
that
the
each
email.
tree, even if it's only
But
six
I
or
see
seven.
some on everybody, I
we
sent it
just
out.
need to answer a question.
I can't
What?
believe you took some of those
First.
trees.
Yeah,
Is it true that the trees are not going to go back in the sidewalk because then they will be non-ADA compliant?
I don't know that answer.
Right, that's the question we
Yeah.
need to answer.
Yeah,
So
The answer
can
would
you-
be yes, if it is indeed
So is
not
there-
ADA
but we don't know if that's
compliant.
true.
Right, so
Correct.
how do we,
If you could
do you
explore
know?
that, that would.
and then also
Yeah.
maybe,
If I could see that, I could write the question out.
sure, you can have this, this is
Oh,
from your,
I'll take
this,
it.
I sent this out to everybody saying,
I know,
this is another thing on your agenda, right?
okay.
Didn't I?
So the big issue is that some of the sidewalk
Did I- am I forgetting it?
has
I don't
changed.
I'm sorry?
Some of the
For some reason, my
sidewalk
name-
depths have changed, so
couldn't
they
find
did
my
these
name
traffic,
on the-
so it,
in
the
some of them are wider
email.
and some of them are
So,
less wide.
S me,
Yeah.
whatever,
So the
but it
concern
is
is
there.
that some of the
So
areas
things have been
where
coming to
trees
me
were
on my
removed
different
and
emails.
they're less
So I
wide,
don't know if something didn't get
can
done.
trees go back in that area?
I have all mine meshed in my inbox.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Boxes, so I
There are
don't see, I don't pay attention to which
places.
one's
In other
coming
words,
from where.
There were
You know what
many,
I
many
do now?
trees taken down,
I have
and
two.
it's completely shadeless now.
Right.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But the promise has always been
I
that they
noticed
would
the
be
signature
replanting
on yours.
of many native trees.
Mhm.
And so that has kind of quelled people, you know, and everyone's waiting for that to
Right.
happen this fall. And so
Right.
this puts a little question mark.
And they, just so I understand, the word native was used in conjunction with street trees?
Not
Yeah.
all of them are
To
native,
the
so
extent
we
that
do
they could.
understand.
Okay,
Right.
okay, that's a
Yeah.
fair
But it's
statement.
funny, what I
Where
don't
possible,
understand looking
some
at the
were
side,
not native.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, what I don't understand why there wasn't an effort for some of the larger trees to accommodate the tree with the sidewalk. Like in White Plains, which is much more of a city than here, that's exactly what they did in certain areas. So I don't understand, I mean, what happened or,
You have to read the
Yeah,
memo,
I
yeah, I
mean-
mean,
Okay.
it kind of explains it in that too. I don't know that I agree with it, but it just, they do give reasons why they decided they needed to,
Okay.
specific sites.
That June 26th represented my third day here.
No, it was last year,
Oh,
it's 18.
2018, okay, so that's
Right.
great, okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah, so
wasn't
we
here
know,
yet. All right,
yeah, so the
I will take
question
a look
is,
at it,
so
take
this
a look at
ADA,
it.
the ADA and tree thing is an important thing.
Yeah.
And then, if you could for us too, is just find out, like who wasn't talking to who to have that happen, because like, that seems
Sorry.
like a management fail,
Right.
honestly, you know?
Yeah.
but
Like-
what's, what are we gonna do? I mean,
Well, I don't know, but like,
nothing that can be
Well,
done.
I think it's clear that the tree's not gonna go there.
Right,
So,
if
I
the
mean-
tree
Well,
can't go
right,
there,
can't go
well,
there.
so we just have to clarify that first.
First.
Right,
and then
Which
what's,
tree
then
are you
we,
talking about?
any trees.
Any
Many
tree
trees
anywhere?
in many
Oh,
spots.
no,
Yeah.
there, I think in many areas, the depth of the sidewalk was unchanged, so it's a swap. It's, they did the work, the tree will go in, and I know that they ordered, you know, many, many trees. There are certain areas that are actually highlighted, and Steve specified
Yeah.
that this is going to, be an obvious difference. The question is,
Right.
whether there are going to be some trees, maybe not the exact one-to-one replacement. And if there can't be a tree planted in the ground, is there enough
Clearance
space,
or
clearance
whatever.
to be able to have a larger planter? Do they plan for the larger planter to put a small tree in, like in front of the berms? They're not large trees, but they're still, they give a feel of shade.
Yeah.
And along that corner, there,
You mean by the dry cleaner?
yeah,
That's awful. They have no, they can't put the trees back?
well, no,
That's what-
no, we don't know.
We don't know, that's what we're trying to find
There are
out.
some areas, but the
Near the
width of the
train,
sidewalk
near the
changed
train
and
track,
ADA
that's actually where the
changed.
service area is.
So ADA requirements are now, have now changed, so from when they were originally planted, so
Right,
if you redo
right.
it now, you have to be compliant.
Right,
So
but
that
they didn't
takes-
change last
It's
year.
like complete streets in Massachusetts.
They didn't change that.
Since the
And
last
one
time
of
they
those trees
planted
is
the
considered
trees.
invasive, did you see that? I sent that to you.
yes, yeah, so just,
Which one, the one from China?
Yep, the
That
hedge
one's
maple.
Zelkovia.
hedge maple.
Oh, okay, I thought you
That's
would have
Hedge.
guessed the Zelkovia, cause I don't think that's.
No,
what it's called.
Zelkovia I wouldn't either, I don't know that Zelkovia is
What about
considered,
shrubs or something?
Well, it's not from this country,
I know
I'll
it's
say it's not native, I'll leave it
it's
at
not
that.
native, but the other
Okay.
one was actually, I had never heard of it and it was actually has invasive potential, so.
Yeah, so don't plan it.
But
Okay,
it's listed as a potential
So,
tree.
just,
That part.
the last thing I was gonna bring up, maybe this ties into your Earth Day, I don't think it's gonna be worth for, Community Day in September, but, So you were familiar with, so that's why how to reach that audience in terms of, you know, when and how something can affect your pocketbook. And just in my month here, obviously, the real estate industry is very interested in everything that goes on. And, you know, can I do this here? Is this non-buildable? And, you know, would they have to get a permit for this? And all of us in the office, it's, you know, like they're just questions that you get, and it's like, well, we can only tell you what you're telling us. That's, you know, it's not exactly a description of a project, it's, you know, just for sale purposes. So, you know, plants is not on their mind. They know about wetlands, right? Okay, that's fine, and, you know, there's a tree replacement here. So when I came across this article, the one thing that I found interesting, this is in England. Montaldo is a lawyer in Liverpool and the head of civil litigation at the firm Colby and Solicitors. His three most profitable lines of work are personal injury suits, bad landlords, and Japanese knotweed. The UK has made knotweed disclosure mandatory in all deeds of sale. British banks will not issue a mortgage to a property with knotweed on its grounds or to one with knotweed growing nearby unless a management plan is in place. In February, HSBC clarified its mortgage policy in a letter to a parliamentary committee which was committed to addressing knotweed even in the midst of the Brexit chaos. Any knotweed growing within 7 meters of a property is unacceptable security, said the country's largest bank. So that's England.
I
Who
love that,
cares?
though.
What does that have to do with
No,
me?
that's awesome.
Okay.
But we may be headed
The
there.
first American knotweed lawsuit, as far as I can tell, I being the author, was decided in 2014 when Cynthia and Alan Inman of Scarsdale, close, sued the owners of the shopping center next door, alleging the defendants had allowed knotweed to thrive on their property and from there undermined the Inman's property value. They won $535,000 in damages. So,
Yeah.
having said that, you know, I mean, if you wanted to somehow
Tell people about
knotweed is
that.
not there, but even to link, I mean, you know, this is just information that
Oh, I
I
like
got
it.
I mean, I like
Phragmites
it.
or something.
Send that to us.
That's really interesting.
It's
And
like,
it
yeah.
also,
Send that article.
it makes me think, should we have a program on knotweed? You know, should we have a speaker come in, you know, a local speaker who can talk about a couple of people on a panel to kind of
Right.
say, you know.
But
the
any of
question
those.
be, what is the town policy?
Yeah.
So in
Don't
terms,
plant it? No, I mean,
No,
that's
no,
obvious,
no,
right,
but what about
how do we
untended litter?
remove it on
Well,
our property?
You know, we've, in
Town
my
property.
former life, have had to deal with this too, and, you know, there is a town code about obviously having to maintain your property, and if it's regularly mowed, poison ivy, what does that mean? I don't have an answer to that, and I'm not sure I could, you know, and I'm certainly not an attorney, and I'm sure like from reading the code, it would be difficult for me to extract, oh, well, they have to replant, or they have to like strip out all the poison, they have to, you know, I
It's
don't
almost
really
like the
get
public-
that, you
I
know?
wonder if the public, I just wrote down a note to self, knotweed inventory. Like, is there a way that the town could do a knotweed inventory on the roadways that we're seeing? You know, where is it, and then come up with, that's where maybe we could come up with a plan to deal with it on public land.
Because there's
We could ask
public
the
land that's owned by the
DPW.
town.
Yeah.
There's public land that's at the side of county roads. And then we of course have it all along the sawmill.
And it's on
This is-
it's on 133, I mean, I see it,
Those are
7
county roads,
bridges
right?
and 7,
Right, but the one thing which you know, knotweed really doesn't grow in wetlands, you know, so what grows in wetlands, it's Phragmites, and, you know,
nuke the frog.
there's obvious, you know, there's, maybe not some of the Mount Kisco houses I've seen, but it seems like in Chappaqua proper, it's, you know, I said we should have a pool at the office to see who has the largest parcel that would not be impacted by wetlands or wetlands buffer if they wanted to do a project, because it seems like, you know, once you migrate from the existing structure and try to do anything else, like something could sort of like catch you. Right, exactly, so to me, that kind of becomes, you know, again, knotweed is one, but to me, like the frag is more, I mean, it's a bit grandstanding, you know what I mean, to try to like instill maybe, you know, you're looking to gain attention by fear more than like being inclusive, but it's something that, you know, that's when we went, you know, me and fellow wetland scientists were like, well, what if they said the same thing about frag? They're rhizomatous, they pop through pavement, they do
Yeah.
things that are damaging. What if that becomes the next, you know, a place like Chappaqua, from reading the comprehensive plan, which was built on a lot of wetlands, you know, it's like, is that, you know, if they start regulating plants at that level, you know, then I said it would definitely interest some financial
Sure.
parties, so that was it,
Very
so
cool.
anyway,
Thank you.
So-
Is it possible to send that out with the lawsuit and the Scarsdale?
oh yeah, that was an article that I happened upon in May, yeah, I have that, sure,
Yeah, send it,
Yeah.
I would love to see
I
it.
will, sure,
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you
Nice
very
meeting you.
much.
Yes,
Very nice
Thank you for
meeting
your
you.
time.
okay.
Alright, so what are we